Hello, very good morning to you. It's just after 7 o'clock on Saturday, April the 27th. I'm David Bull. This is Weekend Breakfast here on talkTV. Thank you very much indeed for your company. Now, it's miserable outside, but it is Saturday, and that means I have great news for you. Yes, of course I do. Today is Gummy Bear Day.
Yum.
It's a day to celebrate the chewy sweets.
Yum.
Also, today it's the Ray Scarecrow Festival. Yes, it's taking place in Ray in Lancashire. So what is that? Well, villagers adorn their homes with scarecrows. There is also a lantern procession of scarecrows. There is also a scarecrow competition. Sounds fantastic. Also, today is Marconi Day, a day to celebrate the father of the radio. Now, the Italian wireless communicator pioneer, Guglielmo Marconi. Of course, we're celebrating the father of the radio. And all I can say to that is these Italians get everywhere, don't they, Gabriella? Let's start today's show, shall we?
Today's fascinating facts.
So I've got some really good ones for you on this day. Today, the 27th of April, in 1667, the blind, impoverished John Milton sold the copyright of Paradise Lost for a whopping £10. On this day in 1749, the first official performance of Handel's Music for the Royal Fireworks in Green Park in London took place. Now, it actually finished early due to the outbreak of fire. But Handel stuck there, he stuck to his conducting, and the audience ran for their lives. And on this day in 1840, the foundation stone for the new Palace of Westminster, also known as the Houses of Parliament or Westminster Palace, was laid by the wife of the architect, Sir Charles Barry. And those are today's fascinating facts. Well, talking of huge cornerstones... Good morning, Dr. Rennie. I didn't know what I was going to say, actually.
Nor did I.
I had to double think it, and I thought, I can't say
and
that.
I was thinking to myself, that will be the first time anyone's ever said that about me.
What, that you're a huge cornerstone? Well, indeed. With rough edges. We'll see what I do. Now, can we just talk about the Ray Scarecrow Festival? I think this is very exciting. I love these eccentric festivals that take place around the country. So this, so it starts today. Oh, crikey, in this weather. There is a 10K road race, which I wish I could do. Running, yes, 1:15 that starts. Tomorrow there's a car boot sale and a forest of Beauland Populaire.
Car boot sales. Do you remember that when they were really, really trendy?
They still are really trendy.
Are they?
Yes, you need to go to the country, get out of London. Seriously, they're really big. Then Friday is the Giant Scarecrow Parade with the Battaglia Samba Reggae Band.
I like that. I like the sound of it.
It's all going on in Ray, in Lancashire,
and
let
this
me tell
weekend,
you.
let's hope the sun comes out, because it's not out in London right now.
Oh, it's absolutely dreadful. And the theme for this year, sci-fi. How do you have a sci-fi scarecrow?
Yeah, I'm not sure I like the theme.
No. Anyway, well done, Ray. Yes, I hope it goes very well, and I hope the weather improves, actually. Let's talk about what's going on in the news, shall we? It's on every front page this morning. I think we can just sum it up with this one. This is the Times. King returns to public life. Yes, the King is to resume public duties next week, according to Buckingham Palace. And doctors said they're pleased with the progress of his cancer treatment. Now, as we know, he's been undergoing cancer treatment since February. He is going to return to public-facing engagements on Tuesday. And the medical team say they are very encouraged by the progress made so far, and the doctors remain positive about the King's continued recovery. I think that's really great.
It's great news, and I think it's quite interesting to watch people's reactions, that the general public are actually genuinely interested and genuinely affected by it. Yeah, so it's great news, and long may it continue.
I think it's rather brilliant. Buckingham Palace it normally chooses its words quite carefully, and they're calling this a milestone. And it looks like the state visits are going ahead. So this is going to be in June. He will host a state visit from the Emperor and Empress of Japan. He's also undergoing some external engagements as well. My mouth nearly dropped open when I read this morning. As the first anniversary of the coronation approaches.
No, I mean, we were sitting here, weren't we, just dealing with that amazing
Well,
event.
I did a coronation show with Rosanna downstairs, and it feels like it was like 3 weeks ago.
Should have been me.
What, getting married? Their Majesties remain deeply grateful for the many kindnesses and good wishes they've received from around the world throughout the joys and challenges of the past year. We still don't know, and it's none of our business actually. We don't know what cancer the King has. We know that he originally went in for an enlarged prostate, so there have been no details on that. And of course, the Princess of Wales, we still don't know what she's undergone.
I suspect with the passage of time, when this period hopefully is behind him, we may well find out. But I think for the time being, it's private. It should always be private. People should only share their medical information when they want to.
I totally agree. Also, the King is very keen to help cancer charities, and in fact, one of the first things he's going to do is to go to
visiting a cancer
centre, and good on him. Do you know what? He's really grown in my estimation, and I think many people thought they weren't sure what his reign would be like after his formidable mother. But actually, I think he's really grown into it.
They were very big shoes to fill, weren't they? And I think, again, in the passage of time, we will look back on this reign in equally, shining light, as it were, that we'll look at it and think, well, he did that differently, but it was this, because they will be different.
And he's passionate, isn't he?
He's passionate. I mean, and I think so far he hasn't put many feet wrong. He has delved a little bit into politics, which I think he shouldn't do, and that's where I think he can learn from what his mother did.
He's known for his spidery letters, isn't he?
Yeah.
The good news is it is hope now the King will be able to attend Trooping the Colour, the 80th anniversary of D-Day, Royal Ascot, which I did make an appearance at last year, which was rather fun, and the Buckingham Palace garden parties. Those garden parties are also really important. This is a time when normal people get honoured, and it is an amazing... Have you? Yeah, it's an amazing event, isn't it?
It is. People queuing up to say hello to the Queen. That was what I found quite amazing. A queue snaking around the gardens and the Queen going, oh, hello, fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this is all very good. And as we said, it's no coincidence. The first visit next week is to a cancer treatment centre. He's going to talk to staff there and patients there. And I think people will understand why he is, why he's so passionate about it as well. And once you're touched by it, I think that changes everything. Actually.
Yes, I think it does. I mean, it does change everything. And I think what this does is it, again, brings it out into the open where people can talk about something that sometimes is still a little bit of a taboo that other people don't know how to handle. So, people don't know what to say to somebody who's suffering from cancer. So this is great. This really actually opens up that conversation.
I agree, and sort of demystify it and make you realise it doesn't matter how much money you've got or how privileged you are.
Yeah.
You can suffer from cancer. There's something quite interesting, though, on all... So the photo must have been sent by the palace. It's the same photo in every single paper. But if I just show you this, there's some, I don't know whether you can see that or we got the front page, actually, of any of the newspapers. But the author and historian Sir Anthony Selden said the photo is intriguing for one reason, and that is how much it focuses on the Queen.
Yeah, so she's looking down the camera and he's looking at her. So everything he's saying, look at Camilla.
What do you read into that?
I think it says to the world, this is my rock. This is what gets me through. I think that's what it says. I think it's lovely. I think he's looking at her with love. I think it's their 17th wedding anniversary. Yes. And I think, he's proving that when you marry for the right reasons, it's a joyous place to be.
She looks really happy as well, actually, in that photograph, which was taken on their anniversary. Let's move on. We'll do the front pages, actually. I'll show you that photo in detail at around 7:20, so in about 7 minutes or thereabouts. Let's move on to this, and I don't know what you make of this. This was published in The Guardian. Researchers found more than a third of boys and girls have consumed alcohol by the age of 11. This is a study by the World Health Organization, shows more than half of children have drunk alcohol by the age of 13. Now, I looked at that and I thought, well, in Europe, everyone gives their kids drinks as a rite of passage.
Alcohol?
So that's why I looked at this. And apparently, according to this, the extrapolation is Great Britain has the worst rate of child alcohol abuse worldwide, and more than half of children in England, Scotland and Wales have drunk alcohol by the age of 13. This is a massive study, 280,000 children, looking at alcohol, cigarettes and vape usage. I'm not sure what I glean from this.
So I think two things can be true at the same time. So on the one hand, I think the UK does have a problem with alcohol generally. I think
all Northern European countries, I think, do.
They really do. And we are seeing that by behaviour. We're seeing Spain, certain regions are banning British tourists because they're so badly behaved when they're drunk. However...
Tenerife wants them out.
Malaga wants them out. And I know that because, I have a house there. So But at the same time, I think this is a bit of a nonsense study by the World Health Organization.
I'm glad you said that.
Because it's basically, has this child, however young, ever tasted alcohol? Well, I grew up, when I raised Callum, we did it in the same way that I'm now raising Alice, that alcohol is not a taboo. When we have a family meal where we have wine, she's allowed to have a sip of our wine. She has a glass with her squash in.
Yeah.
We cheers each other. It's not a taboo. The result of that when Callum grew up is he really isn't that interested in alcohol. Because it was never taboo and he didn't have to go out and chase it and binge it. And I think we could learn from some of our European neighbours.
So do I. Absolutely right. And the worry for me is when you have very strict parents and then alcohol is a taboo, the minute those kids go to university or leave home, then they go absolutely crazy. And we've seen the result of that. Dr. Hans Klug, the WHO Regional Director for Europe, talks about this and he says, considering, and this is a good point, the brain continues to develop well into a person's 20s and adolescents need to be protected from the effects of toxic and dangerous products. Now, yes, but we're talking about how much here. A sip of wine isn't...
Which it doesn't quantify in this study.
It doesn't, no.
And I think this is really interesting because I agree with that doctor that we know that a boy's brain especially is not formed until 25, fully formed. So we do need to protect it and that's why we should do it sensibly so that they don't binge.
He hits back at you. People tend to have a perception that introducing children to moderate drinking is a good way of teaching them safer drinking habits. This is untrue.
Well, it was true in my family.
Hans says you're wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've raised children and it seems to be working fine. I mean, I think...
He goes on to say the earlier a child drinks, the more likely they are to develop problems with alcohol in later life.
But what's drink?
Yeah, I think that's right. What worries me is these kids who have those disgusting alco pops where they're really sugary, you don't know what's in them, and it's full of revolting stuff anyway.
And also, what's hidden and been lost in the headlines of this study, David, is the number of children vaping.
I know. So that is in there, and of course
it's hidden in the headlines.
It is hidden in the headlines, and of course I think that is a much bigger problem actually generally going forward. This is a great story. We're going to be talking about the railways later on because Labour has come out with this amazing plan, they think, to nationalise the railways. Now, it's not quantified. There's no costing on any of it.
It's not going to cost anything, David.
Of course it is.
Did you not listen to them?
No, isn't it?
No, apparently.
It's free.
It's cost neutral.
All right. And then they said, well, so, OK, great idea. Will it mean rail fares come down? Well, we can't possibly tell you that.
No.
Well, what's the point of doing that then? Anyway, so this sort of fits into this rather brilliantly. This is in The Independent. Rail staff are hiding from passengers because they're so ashamed of the service they're offering. Yes, this is the House of Lords hearing seasoned train managers were absolutely terrified of going to work because they do not know if the equipment will work, leaving them to face abuse from angry passengers. This was a transport debate in the upper chamber and obviously coincides with Labour's plan to renationalise the railway. Now, the Labour peer and former railway man, Lord Snape, said, the failings of our railway network are many and manifold. Fares have gone up, reliability has declined since privatisation. Not sure that's true. The high daily rate of cancellations has led to the collapse of morale amongst those in Birmingham. They tell me, the staff, they hide from the public because they're so ashamed of the product that have to be put in front of them. Now, you've got to remember also, they're fighting for more pay. They want another 4 plus 4%. That's another 8% for 4 days.
Well,
as a train driver, 65 grand.
I think that's a very interesting point because the argument that the unions always use is, well, it's privatised and if the bosses can take big salaries and pay dividends, then why can't our people?
Yeah.
What are they going to say when it is no longer privatised? The other thing about this, David, is that they're going to create 2 new quangos in order to run this, the customer service or the passenger service organisation and the overall body. More money, more quangos. And Network Rail is already not in private hands, and they're going to have to rely on that. It's old stock, old rails, nothing works. This is a disastrous idea.
Well, in fact, it's been poo-pooed, and we'll talk about this later by the IEA. They say this is absolutely nonsensical. But Lord Burt, who was the head of the BBC, he's now an independent crossbencher, he was a strategy advisor to Blair, and he makes a brilliant point. The train from Liverpool to Norwich, which is near me, passing through and stopping at some of our greatest cities, Manchester, Sheffield, Nottingham and Peterborough, takes 5.5 hours. instead of doing that train trip, why don't you pop on a plane and go to Sharm el-Sheikh? And actually, you get to Sharm el-Sheikh quicker than you would Norwich.
Yes, well, this is why HS2 should have been started in the north, and the cross-Pennine route was really important. But oh no, we're just going to get from Birmingham to the outskirts of London a little bit quicker.
What is the point of that?
None at all.
And also, living in East Anglia, trying to go across country is almost impossible, actually. You have to come through London and out.
Yeah.
Well, isn't the whole point we want to relocate distribution and assets and all the rest of it?
Just as a country, we are absolutely incapable of planning and delivering infrastructure.
Yeah, totally agree. And that brings me nicely to the question I want to ask you this morning. On a scale of 1 to 10, I like these. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the UK's railways and why? What number would you give?
2.
2? Based on what?
Well, they do run.
Yeah.
You know, they go along the tracks.
Sometimes they're good.
Yeah, sometimes they're good, but the thing is, when you're actually trying to run a busy life, you can't rely on sometimes.
No. And also, stop putting express on the end of the name, because it's no faster. You know who I'm talking about. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the UK's railways and why? Let us know. 0344 499 1000. You can WhatsApp us as well to the same number. You can also text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can also X us. Did you bring it? Oh, you did. talkTV, then leave a space. Hashtag Breakfast Doctors. I'm absolutely amazed you remembered to bring it in.
I'm already looking.
Are you? Good.
Yes.
Excellent. So keep all of your messages coming in, please. Now, time for a break. After the break, we'll go through all of this morning's front pages. I'll show you that story and the photograph of the King and Queen. Joining us this morning, Andrew Eborn, barrister and broadcaster extraordinaire. Maybe he'll do some magic as well.
Do you think?
Maybe.
Pull a rabbit out of the hat.
Maybe he works for the Conservative Party. We shall see. This is talkTV. Welcome back to Weekend Breakfast Time, 7:24, Saturday, April the 27th. Dr. Rennie, my other wife, is back in.
No, your original wife.
Morning, you ray of joy, you. So I'm asking this morning, based on Labour's plan to nationalise the railways, what do you think of that? And I've been asking also on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the UK's railways and why? Now, this has gone mad. So by text, Kevin has got in touch saying, 8, the East Coast line is excellent. This one is from Gary Batten by WhatsApp saying, hello doctors, I think the rail service in my area is amazing. From Woking to London, 30 minutes and the trains are regularly. I went to Manchester recently, it was easy, I would give it 8. 2, this is Pete. You see, this is 2, right? This is Pete because he's in East Anglia.
Oh.
So I agree with that. There is a direct train to and from Norwich and Manchester direct, but he still gives it a 2. Jane says, thank you very much for this. Jane says 3. And this one says, train franchises should not be owned in the UK by other countries so as to subsidise their own country's transport systems. That's Vincent. Thank you very much indeed. Keep all of those coming in, please. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the UK's railways and why? Whilst you do that, it's time to introduce barrister and broadcaster extraordinaire Andrew Eborn. I nearly called you Dr. Andrew Eborn.
You can call me Dr. Andrew. What I love is that it's been trending all over Twitter, Return of the King. And I thought, I woke up, I thought, oh, no, that's really, isn't that lovely? What a joy.
You thought it was about you?
I did. You know, and little tweets, they say that sort of stuff.
It may well have been. It's been a long time.
It's been far too long. It's been so good to see both of you.
Very lovely.
And you've been working out.
I have.
Look
Do you know,
at
my shirts are getting really tight.
I saw that.
I'm going to have to go and stop yawning. I'm going to have to go and buy some new clothes.
Oh, well, I think my shirts have got tighter as well. I think they've shrunk, actually. It's either that or very healthy living.
I think it's good lunches, Andrew. Very good. Well, you are a barrister. That's what you do.
It's compulsory. You have to when you become a barrister.
Yes, well, you have to have really nice lunch.
No, you have to do 40 dinners to qualify. And the idea, used to be my day.
Whoa. What do you mean you have to do 40 dinners?
The idea is you all belong to an inn of court. There are 4 inns of court.
Right.
And the idea is you meet your fellow barristers by communicating and you do that, porting cigars and eating quail's eggs in aspic. And you have to do a certain number of dinners in order to qualify. So that's what I did.
And is that so? As a little barrister, you're
Little
with
barrister,
you're then
baby
with
barrister.
the great and the good. Is that what you do at the end?
And they're paid almost nothing, baby barristers.
I know.
No,
they
it's very
are.
good. Well, I was really spoiled. So the Inner Temple, it's all in the news somewhere. I was at the Inner Temple, so I got a free flat in the Temple, which you never appreciated as a kid.
Yes.
Free flat in the Temple and a parking space, even though I don't have a car.
And for people who don't know where that is, it's a brilliant part of London, isn't it? It's
We
absolutely
did.
brilliant.
Well, I took you there.
You did
we've
take
been
me
there.
there.
You were
and
wonderful.
It was rather marvellous. let me
Yes.
say. Andrew, very good to see you. Just before
Thank
we
you.
go into the stories that you've chosen, let's have a look at this morning's front pages. Let's start with the Times this morning. The headline, King returns
Thank
to
you.
public life. Will you be quiet? The King will return to public duties next week after Buckingham Palace announced his doctors were very encouraged by the progress of his cancer treatment. He and the Queen, as we were saying, will visit a cancer treatment centre where they're going to meet medical specialists and patients in what will be his first full public engagement since his diagnosis was announced in February. Really good news as well, according to Buckingham Palace. The state visit to Britain of the Emperor and Empress of Japan will go ahead at the end of June. Now, a palace spokesman stressed that although the King's treatment was not yet over, it was too early to say how long it would last, and his medical team, though, are very encouraged by the progress made so far and remain very positive about the King's recovery. The same story really pretty much in all the papers this morning. The Daily Telegraph has a rather brilliant headline, The Return of the King. That is the Daily Telegraph this morning. Again, same story, the King resuming public duties next week, according to Buckingham Palace. The Daily Express has a slightly different take, talking about cancer centres and the visit that is now planned. Caring King joins cancer crusade. Compassionate King Charles is vowing to support fellow cancer sufferers after returning to public duties for the first time since his own diagnosis. It goes on to say he has a specific interest in cancer and helping and encouraging those other people who are also affected with cancer. He has been interested in cancer for decades and intends to bring his campaigning zeal to highlight the battle to beat what he once called the beastly disease. I couldn't agree more. The Sun front page, lovely headline. Same picture again. If you notice, as Renee was saying, the Queen is looking straight down the barrel of the lens. The King is looking adoringly at her. The headline, King is back in the saddle. And the copy says, a nation rejoiced last night as King Charles was given the green light to resume official duties. The Mirror, same picture yet again, fit for a king. The King will resume public duties on Tuesday after doctors said they're rather pleased with his cancer recovery. 2 to 3 papers, actually, that don't major on that story. The Guardian this morning says the scale of the teacher shortage crisis in schools is revealed. Apparently, according to them, hundreds of thousands of pupils in England and Wales are being educated on the cheap by low-paid teaching assistants covering lessons for teachers who are off. Now, teaching assistants earn as little as £14,000, are being asked to plug the gaps for little or no extra pay.
So my sister was a teaching assistant and she often took classes on her own as a teacher for under the working salary.
It goes on to say they've actually surveyed 6,000 teaching assistants. 40% are covering classes for regular teachers for at least 5 hours a week, roughly the equivalent of 1 school day a week or half a term's cover over a school year. 15% said they were expected to teach entire classes.
Now imagine
for
being
11...
that teaching assistant. How do you say no when the head says to you, would you cover that class?
And you also don't have the experience to do that, and you're right, you can't say no. The Eye, this is a very interesting story. Toxic gas surge from US-style chicken farms supplying the UK supermarkets. I'm not sure this is a new story, actually, because I remember this when I was growing up.
It's on the front page, David.
It's
What
on
do
the
you
front.
mean?
Must be news.
Well, it must be. Well, all right, it must be
Foul is
news.
what they say.
So
It's
apparently,
the headline.
poultry waste from mega farms is causing emissions of toxic gas. Ammonia combines with pollutants to create particles linked with higher death rates, respiratory problems,
Do you know,
and heart disease.
I really have a really sensitive sense of smell. I find I can't even smell milk to check whether it's off or not. It will make me vomit. I used to go to Petticoat Lane Market in London regularly, and there is an abattoir there.
Right.
I could not get within. It's a chicken abattoir. I couldn't get within 100 yards of it without it starting to. make me
So when
vomit.
I was much younger, I used to go campaigning. I was very right on, and I would go to a turkey farm.
Yes.
As kids, we used to release the turkeys.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Where did you release them?
I don't think I better say.
That's...
But yes, and I don't like the whole battery provision and the way that they're kept.
But the smell of birds is something else.
It is horrible.
It really is. And they talk about these mega farms run by companies supplying meat to McDonald's, Nando's, Tesco and Marks & Spencer, causing a surge in emissions of potentially deadly gas. Interesting.
Do you know we're only going to be allowed to live in hermetically sealed
this is
pods
the thing.
soon?
You know, at the end of the day, if you've got to feed the population, there has to be a way to do
Absolutely.
that at a
well,
cost
you know
that's
what way they want it to be. They want it to be plant-based and lab-grown.
Vegetables and non-smelling chickens. We can create those.
But lab-grown, exactly.
Now, you're a bit of a geek,
I am a bit of a geek, a bog.
Well, I'm a bit of a geek. And when I
are.
was a child, I was absolutely obsessed with Tutankhamun's tomb,
Yes.
right? And I was obsessed because obviously they would go there.
Yes.
When they opened the tomb, people mysteriously died, didn't they?
That's what happens, absolutely.
Yes, because there's a curse. There's a big curse on anyone who opens a tomb of a pharaoh. Right? I know the cat's really good. We're not talking about the cat. But let me just tell you. So in 1922, Howard Carter, they opened Tutankhamun's tomb. There was a string of deaths among the people involved in the excavation. 4, including the men who funded the excavation, they all died. 4 months and 16 years later, between 4 months and 16, they thought it was a curse placed upon those people who had opened Tutankhamun's tomb. Okay. It now turns out that actually that's not the reason. It was radioactivity.
Hey, you see.
And the reason for that is apparently it was to do with the bedrock where it was actually built was high in radioactivity.
Oh, is that right?
So did all of the people who put the tomb in there die?
I think everyone died.
They all died. Some of them of old age. I mean,
Okay.
Can we do the cat?
I prefer... Oh, you want to do the cat? Hang
Please
on.
show
where's
the
it?
The cat
Please,
is
the
lovely.
cat.
What I love is in the start. Look at the two-tone cat. Is
That's
glorious.
not a cat.
The perfect pussy. Here we are. Have a look at that.
Look.
Here's the lovely...
Oh,
I don't know if you can see that. Oh, hang on a minute, let's go
It
there.
looks
Oh,
good
no,
on
wrong way.
radio.
There we are, two-tone. Look at that cat.
Brilliant.
Isn't that wonderful?
I want that cat.
It's no paint job, is what they say.
People cannot believe this two-tone cat is real and think the owner paints her fur. And apparently, she's an Instagram star.
She would be.
She's called Domino.
She would be.
She has 2 different coloured eyes. Yes, she does, brown
does.
and blue.
Yes.
With one orange and one the other blue. She lives in Holland. People say it's AI or Photoshop, and they don't believe it.
I want that incredible, isn't
Oh, well,
it?
you're the right person.
Well, I think
AI.
that's right.
That is
Photograph.
cat of the week.
Cat of the week,
Oh,
Peter
yeah, Peter
Cardwell.
Cardwell. Look at us getting in there early.
Peter Cardwell, that's for you.
Hey, always a thrill.
Right, you've
glorious.
chosen...
I chose lots of stories. Some of them were far too serious. So we abandoned all of them. So it came out.
Well,
so I'll tell you what happened.
I said to you, get some fun ones. Get some interesting ones.
So what I do, dedication to this show, I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I went through all the papers. I did all the heavy stuff.
He's lying.
You are lying.
You're right, I didn't go to bed. I was already awake. It was a glorious party
Well, you were
yesterday.
having one of those banquets.
I do have
Yes,
those banquets.
yes,
It's
yes.
glorious. So I ditched all of the serious
Right.
stories because they're all good. But I found some wonderful ones.
Right.
One of which we should start with. Actually, it's 30 years. Can you believe it's 30 years since Agent Provocateur came out with all these knickers? Do you remember that knickers in the old days were really, really drab?
I think that's wonderful.
Isn't that glorious?
They were
and
big bloomers.
Joe Corey, who's the son of Vivienne Westwood and Malcolm McLaren, he founded Agent Provocateur.
It caused quite a stir at the time.
Oh,
I seem to
absolutely.
recall, when it
Very, very
launched.
racy. And what happens is all sorts of superstars. It's empowering, isn't it? I mean, you should speak about it. You tell me what you think. But all of those sort of basically big stars in the world use these wonderful knickers, and he became the knicker king and made an absolute fortune as a result of it.
Wow.
So as a woman, I'm probably not allowed to say this anymore. I'll probably be locked up in the tower later
Yes,
today.
hopefully.
I think beautiful, sexy underwear
There's quite a few of
is
them.
awesome. Look at it.
There you
Amazing.
go, celebrate the big birthday. Have a look at that.
Yes.
I can tell they're a bit itchy, some of
I
them.
agree.
They're good.
I don't think you can wear it out, Renee.
Well, I didn't say wear it
Oh, right.
out.
I don't know. You might want to.
But you know, you say that. You walk down the streets of London nowadays and there are girls
I know
wearing
there
them.
There are
Wow.
girls wearing stuff, and men as well, and men who identify as women, and
Yes.
all that sort of stuff. So it's all out there. And what I love is 30 years. How did those 30 years fly by?
Well, exactly, and it reminds me actually of when the other kind of shops launched, like Body Shop, for
Yes.
example. I'd never seen anything like it, and the smell that wafted out of those shops, that must have been around the same
Better
time,
than the
wasn't it?
chickens, I can tell
Better
you.
than
The smell
the
from
chickens. you the shop.
Body shop.
The shop that gets that really right is Lush.
Ah.
Oh,
When
don't
you
know.
walk past a Lush
And
shop,
do they push that stuff out,
they
don't they?
push the smells out, and it actually just draws you in. You're like,
So back in the day, Abercrombie was the one.
Back in the day.
Do you remember Abercrombie?
I
And that
still remember that.
smell, the
Yes.
smell of the aftershave that wafted
But
out.
they're
of
very
that.
clever, and lots of stores, they put the bakery deliberately by the door,
Yes.
won't they? So you can smell your fresh croissant.
and you can see the
And
donuts.
you can see your donuts.
well, it does
if you
go to
look
show
carefully.
actually how powerful and emotive smells are.
Yummy.
That's what they say, isn't it? Memory, the biggest memory you get is from smell.
So that's so true. There are certain smells that will take me back
Yeah.
to being at primary
Yeah.
school, for example.
Parma violets. My
Parma
gran.
violet.
do you remember
No,
that?
there's something about steam pudding, and
I
it
love
transports me back to when I was about 5.
Coal
6.
tar soap, do you remember that?
I
Coal
like
tar
that. You can
soup.
still get that. Can
So
you get it?
I then found Pears soap. You know that orange soap?
Pears.
Pears Morgan?
soap. Yes,
Oh,
Pears
yeah,
soap.
Pears.
That reminds me of my grandparents.
I love
it
that
does.
soap.
Do you?
I love it. I love the smell of that.
But that's what they say. And actually, when people are getting out, you'll know, you're both doctors, let me tell you. When you're
What do
older...
you know? You're a barrister.
I can make it up. That's what I'm good at. But that's what happens. So your sense of smell is one of the last things to go. And you'll basically, if you waft whatever your smells from your childhood, that's what
So
they do.
that's
Memories come
why
flooding back.
when people lost their sense of smell in COVID,
It was so
Yes.
it was so
devastating.
devastating.
Yeah.
Well, what we call anosmia.
Anosmium, I think they called it. Anosmium.
Have you finished? Right. Okay, next one.
Oh, next one I like. This is another one about the young are getting thicker.
Yes.
Is what they say.
As in weight-wise, or as in intellectually?
As in intellectually. And I always say the smarter our devices get, the more stupid we get, because if you use it or lose it is the reality. And you watch these youngsters sitting in restaurants, or going on little cruises on the buses and things like that. They're all cocooned in their world. They've lost the power of language. They've
agree.
lost how you communicate. And it's a real issue, isn't it?
But we're doing it in so many ways. Our education system has been dumbed down, and so I took A-levels back in 1985.
53.
Back in 1985.
What a quill and pen.
With a quill and pen. Four
And a
science A-levels, and you will attest to this.
Oh.
Even in chemistry, we had to write essays.
Yes.
Yes.
Because it would say devise an experiment, explain,
Yes.
da da da. I retook them in 2006.
Why?
Because I was going to go to medical school and I wanted to make sure I could still do it.
Yes.
It was a joke.
Why?
There were no essays in any biology or chemistry. It was fill in the missing words and one
that's good.
sentence answers. The very first question on the biology paper, David, was a blank is a biological catalyst. This was an A-level. I learned that.
I know the answer.
What is the answer? What is
Enzyme.
the
Enzyme.
answer? Enzyme, isn't it?
But I learned that. in
Imagine
junior
if I didn't
school.
know that. That would just be awful.
But I learned that in junior school.
Yes.
And I spoke to the tutor who was teaching me,
Hmm.
or allegedly, and he said everything's been moved down a level. So that what was an 11 plus is now an O level. That was an O level is now an A level. And what was an A level is now a degree. So we're dumbing people down at education.
Yes.
Then they're relying on these.
Yep.
But don't forget, it's much easier to control the masses when they're not so
Oh, absolutely. And you
educated.
remember the days of the old slide ruler and that sort of stuff. Now you've got calculators with
Cosine books.
Exactly. What's going to happen now
books.
with artificial intelligence? I wonder if
Oh,
ever
here
mentioned
we
it.
go.
Here, click, it's going to mention
Yeah,
it. The reality is this, is that people can now write first drafts of essays on any topic. What we need to do is increase the power of oracy, to get people up in classes and talking about stuff.
I agree.
And that's a really good way of testing. It's a new skill which we should basically encourage the
But
young
we
to do.
did that, didn't we?
Well,
In
it's not a new
Vivers.
skill, yes.
Vivers. Viva voce.
Well, Viva. Oh, look at you. Latin, that's what they say in the
See?
papers as well.
I don't know, I'm
Latin
now
is something.
Spanish.
Well, I'll tell
Yes.
you what, when I was a kid, I was a kid once, never grew up, but at the age of 3,
Yes.
we used to have elocution lessons. And I still remember to this day, these were the days
What
that we
went
used to-
wrong?
I think you're... so Mrs. Shoesmith, I can tell you, Northgate House, Mrs. Shoesmith, who'll probably be 4,010 now, with her parents still alive. But we used to have greedy old mother guzzled down, plump old pig, no good at nothing, never gave a fig. That's what we used to say at the age of 3. I still remember it. So scarred for life is what happens, but
the
it's
problem
good.
the problem is what you're saying is absolutely right. We should encourage children to stand up and speak. But unfortunately, we're busy telling children that actually if that stresses them out or it affects their mental health, they mustn't do it. And the result of that is that's the worst thing you can do for mental health, because if you protect people from the
Yes.
thing that they find
shrink.
challenging, they will never
I
challenge
totally agree.
anything.
But also, I think we need to go back to rote learning, because
Yes.
actually, I still
Totally.
rely on stuff.
Totally.
And it's amazing what I can still remember. I don't know quite how I can, but because it was drummed in so much. I mean, even stuff at med school, weirdly, I can still remember from, you know,
on
hundreds
old
of years
Olympian
ago.
towering tops.
Yes, I know a ruder one.
I know you
Yes.
do, but I decided not to say it.
So basically, we're talking about the cranial nerves,
Yes.
and there is a way to remember the 12
Get
cranial
all
nerves.
of those, the cranial nerves.
On old Olympus towering top, which is one way to remember
There is
those
a ruder
nerves.
way, but
and
I
I
chose
know a
not to
much
do it.
ruder
No,
one
no,
because
yeah.
I went to St Mary's Hospital
I
in
love it.
London,
But-
which was a big rugby playing.
But you know what I do with Alice now on the way to school every morning? We play the timetable songs.
Oh, you do?
And we're
Good.
working through them one by one. And until she knows one, we're not allowed to move on to the next one.
Right.
But they used to have the whole school, whole class would recite them.
Apparently, we're meant to be doing the papers.
Oh, this is in the papers.
Right,
You told me.
Anyway, so people are getting thick. Right, okay, I think we've done that.
So that is in the papers. That's in the papers.
Right, I think we're meant to go to a break at
Yes, I think
around
so
this
too.
time. So whilst you compose yourself,
Thank you.
Andrew, we'll take a break. We'll have more papers after this break. Also, many of you getting in touch about the railways. This is from Brian. Good morning. Our railway system is old, dirty, slow, late and expensive. It's been destroyed by the union barons and drivers are paid more than doctors. How bad can it get? Keep all of those coming in, please. This is talkTV. Welcome back to Weekend Breakfast. Time 7:45 now. Saturday, April the 27th. Wow, you're on fire this morning. So many messages coming in. Good morning, Anne. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, doctors. Good start to the weekend. Not a great start, but a good start.
Language is critical.
Oh, yes. Anne, we're trying. Obviously, rates will vary depending where you live. That's very kind of you to let us know that. I rate the railways at -10. The reason is they're greedy. They're overpaid for what they do. They disrupt everyone's lives. They get excellent perks. They forget to mention that. The unions moan about how hard done by they are. Really? If the unions work together and cause nothing but misery for the hard-working taxpayers of this country, it is unacceptable. Strikes should not be allowed. Well said. And, of course, minimum service provision has come in. And, of course, they haven't used any of the legislation.
Well, interestingly, Colonel Vaughan's rambling says the unions will absolutely hate the fact that Labour will renationalise the trains because they know that then they will say we can't give you a pay rise as we've spent all our money on buying the rolling stock.
Exactly, from Roscos. We can talk about that later. I know too much about this now. Tony, good morning to you. The trains are a disgrace. People can no longer book breaks and trips because there's no guarantee they will run. The tickets are prohibitively expensive, and since COVID they've got worse, and has everything that requires customer service, as has everything. Although this one, which has come in by text, LNR, I think it's LNER actually, is a great train service, easy to get from London to Cheltenham. Keep all of those messages coming in, please. But now it's time for a sporting break. It's time for Tom Clayton's Sporting Weekend.
Tom Clayton's Sporting Weekend.
A vision in green this morning. I know
A vision in green. I'm always a vision in green.
I know you
or
are.
some kind of
You're
drab
always
colour.
just a vision.
I am. I'm a spectacle.
You are a spectacle.
I am,
in
yes.
so many ways.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Should we talk about Leicester?
Yes, we shall, because they have returned to the Premier League on the first time of asking. They have been promoted back to the big time. They were relegated last year, having had a remarkably sort of brilliant few years in which they won the Premier League title, they won the FA Cup. You know, they did very, very well. And then all of a sudden they kind of had some financial issues and then got relegated last season. Then this time around they managed to keep a couple of key players, and they've gone up quite easily, I will say.
Okay.
They did do their best not to go up, with a bit of run of poor form in the last few weeks. But fortunately for them, promotion rivals Leeds, who I won't talk too much about, they've also hit a bad patch.
Whose team is Leeds?
It's my team, thank you very much.
They're not doing very well.
They're not doing very well, and that's why I'm in a bad mood this morning.
You are actually.
Because
really
He's furious, isn't he?
Because I stayed up until 10 o'clock last night to watch my team in the most crucial game of the season lose 4-0.
So
as a team who were
so inconsiderate.
But that's a true supporter, Tom.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? I think by the time it gets to 2-0, you must have said, no, it's not going to happen. It's like...
Well, at 2-0, you sort of think, well, it's Leeds. In the last half an hour, anything can happen. When it gets to 3-0, you turn it off and you listen to the radio commentary as you're trying to sleep.
Honestly, I came in this morning, he had a face like thunder.
It did, it was awful, wasn't it?
Awful. Or really miserable.
Miracles happen.
Sorry?
Miracles happen.
It didn't. It was 4-0.
Not to Leeds.
Rub it in.
Talking of which, I don't want to rub it in. How's Ipswich doing?
Ooh.
Yeah, fine. Great.
Great, good.
Great.
Really
They play
insightful.
against Hull later on live on talkSport 2, and If they win, they go back ahead of Leeds in the race for promotion.
Right, you are grumpy.
Yes, I am.
Isn't he really grumpy?
Grumpy?
Let's go back to the chickens.
Grumpy chops. Let's talk about Liverpool getting a new manager.
We shall, yes, because it's a slightly more cheery topic. I don't really mind Liverpool one way or another. They are bringing in a Dutch manager called Arne Slot.
I'm glad you said that, not me.
Arne Slot.
I've seen that
Do you
movie.
think the requirement was that his name rhymed with the outgoing manager?
Oh, that would be good.
Well, I did think that, but then I also thought, is it a case of, it was a requirement to have something that was sort of very pun-worthy for the UK tabloids?
Yes.
Because, things like slotting in and everything like that, that's become the typical. I mean, I must have heard that so many times in the last few weeks. But, anyway, so we understand they've made a £9.4 million agreement.
But my understanding is that Arne Slot was not what people, the chap that people thought would get this job.
No, well, there were a few...
See, look, I know.
Look at you. He knows nothing about football.
I know nothing, but I know that. Now, listen. I do know about this because I talked about it yesterday.
Is that right? Oh, is that right?
Yes.
He knows how to read a briefing very well.
It's about 9 million, wasn't it? If I
9.4 million.
9.4 million.
Slightly less than you earn.
No, yeah, a minute.
Yeah, it's how much. It's less than how much we pay you anyway. Yes. But anyway, so basically there were a couple of options before. Everyone was expecting Xabi Alonso, who is a former Liverpool player, to come in. He has won the title with Bayer Leverkusen this year. By the way, it's the first time ever that club has won the German top division, hence they had a nickname Bayer Leverkusen. And Xabi Alonso has taken him to the title, so everyone thought naturally he's the man to succeed Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool. He said no, so they've gone to...
Oh, he said no?
Yeah, he said no. He said he wanted to stay...
But his name didn't rhyme.
I don't know. I think he said Bavaria.
Nine, Bavaria.
Well, he's Spanish, so...
Oh, nine. What?
He's Spanish.
He's Spanish.
He's not German.
Yeah.
Si, no.
No
would be no in
Well,
Spanish.
it's basically no in a different accent.
Exactly, yes.
So anyway...
I'm fluent.
So long story short, Liverpool getting a new manager. It maybe isn't the first person they thought of, but they're getting a very good manager.
And as you say,
their
it will
place.
be brilliant for the puns and for the tabloid.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That has to be like a John Lewis question, isn't it? When you go for an interview, is that how good is your name for headlines? Wouldn't that be good?
It would be good. Don't spoil it. We're going to talk about that
Well,
later on.
it's a precursor. It's
Stop
going to happen.
interrupting Tom.
Oh, sorry. Carry on, Tom.
Right, no, so now, this is a really interesting story. So NFL, we were talking about this earlier, about how they choose players who are coming out of the academy.
Because it's very different. So it's actually not an academy system. What we're used to in this country is a so-called academy system, where they have... they have scouts go out to watch, we can see pictures on the screen at the moment. This is absolutely enormous. But in the Premier League, we have players that go out and they scout 6, 7, 8-year-olds, and then they put them in their academy and they kind of nurture them right the way through until senior football or until they get absolutely booted out and have no hope for the future. What the NFL does, rather than they do that, so a player goes and plays, say, American football at high school, then they get scouted to go and play on a scholarship at a US college, at which point, colleges are a bigger deal than professional sports over in the US, to the point where they have stadiums that have 100,000 capacity, which is ridiculous.
Look at that.
And then, so we're seeing the pictures, as I say, on the screen. 275,000 people in attendance for this event. It's a big deal. And basically what it is, the top prospects who are no longer able to play college level because they're too old, they have the degrees and they've graduated, they get the opportunity to be drafted into the professionals. So a team can't choose, before this draft, a team can't call someone up and say, we want you to come play for us. They have to wait until this process and they say, right, we're choosing you with this selection at this time. And it's almost a bit like an auction, but basically they have different... options and
so that event we've just seen, when they reveal the player has been signed by whoever, is that a surprise to the audience?
So the audience have no idea. Never mind the audience.
Well, the
world doesn't know. The player doesn't know.
The player doesn't know. How can the player not know?
They get a phone call as they're being selected at that moment, and they pick up the phone and they'll say, "Hi, we're with the." In that case, that was the #1 overall pick we were seeing, a guy called Caleb Williams. They get a phone call saying, "Hi, this is the Chicago Bears. We'd like you to come and play for us. We're going to select you with the first overall pick."
And when do they get that phone call with regards to this event?
2 minutes before they walk out on stage.
How good is that?
They sit in the green room at the back, and there's only a select few. There's only a few that they know are going to get selected at a certain time. So they only might have, I don't know, say up to 15 players in the green room at one time, and there's 32 selections.
To really
per
understand
round.
this, people should watch Last Chance You.
They should. Excellent series on Netflix. I mean, they should watch American football in general because it's a brilliant
It is
sport.
Once they've watched
Last Chance You, they understand
it. And it's brilliant.
And do they do it like the Oscars? Do they sort of pan in on all the potential ones?
Effectively,
and so you see people crying
and then what they do,
happy.
every team has what they call a war room, where they, you know, it's like the war room naturally, and they have like their owner, their head coach, their general manager. They all sit in a room together, and they basically say, we agree that we want to take this player. So someone makes a phone call to that player and says, we want to select you here. Or if they want to...
Can they say no?
The players can't generally...
No.
Generally speaking, the players can't say no. But they can facilitate what you would say what you would call a trade. So teams can trade picks. And
but how does the deal work though? Because contractually, being a lawyer, have they all signed a contract subject to being selected?
So what happens is they all have to make an agreement when they go to the team that they have to go through a certain amount of pre-season, through mini camps and things like that. When they get to a certain point, it's a bit like in football when you sign a professional contract with a youth player. Effectively, so a player will go through a certain amount of trials all the way through, and then they'll get to a certain point in the pre-season, and then they'll sign their professional contract.
And the money, we were saying the money is pretty much the same, so it doesn't matter which team gets you because you're paid.
No, so they have what you call rookie contracts. So in the NFL, the contract values are massively inflated, even in comparison to the Premier League football. You think our footballers get paid a lot. These guys get paid... You know, the highest paid guy in the league is a guy called Patrick Mahomes, who's a quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's got a $500 million 10-year deal. $500 million.
Gosh.
But the interesting thing is these kids are not allowed to go up if they don't pass their education standards.
So the wonderful thing is, unlike in this country where, you know, a player might go right the way through school and right the way through and then get dumped when they're 16, 17, and then all of a sudden they're kind of, you know...
Because they've not really focused on school.
Yeah. The good thing is, if these players don't get selected or if they don't be successful in the NFL, they have a degree, they have a chance at life, and they're 21 years old. It makes so much more sense. So much more sense.
Interesting, Tom. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
I feel very...
He looks happier now. Look at that. He's happy.
It's because I'm talking about sport that doesn't periodically let me down.
Off you toddle and go and cheer up. That was Tom Clayton's Sporting Weekend.
Tom Clayton's Sporting Weekend.
Look at that, he's much cheerier. Andrew, time is very tight, I'm afraid. So, what other story do you want to do?
Okay, well, shall we do the AI when we're tight? So 2 billion people are going to the polls this year. They're voting. For the first time ever, AI is going to have a massive impact. A big story in the papers about Chinese influence and Russian influence and things like that. The BJP party in India, what they've done, one particular candidate, he was using this voice-changing software to make calls, robocalls they're called, and it meant that he could speak in any different dialect. They have the mayor in New York, a guy called Eric Adams, has also been making robocalls, but he could speak in Spanish, in Italian, in Chinese, and so on and so forth. It's incredibly easy. If it's too good to be true, it is too good to be true. So what I thought I'd do is give you an example of some software. So here's a little clip. Play this. This is the English version. Hello, I'm Andrew Eborn. We're living in a diseased information age. There's never been a more important time to question everything. So join me, Andrew Eborn, for Andrew Eborn's Fake or Fact.
Right.
Okay, so that's the English version. Have a look now. I think, what have you got now? We've got a Japanese version. Here's the Japanese.
こんにちは、アンドリュー・エボンです。私たちは情報化時代に生きている。すべてを競うことがこれほど重要な時代はない。これほど重要な時はない。さあ、私と一緒にアンドリュー・エボンのフェイクかファクトか。
So what this is showing, it can be done in real time. So Lazar Vukovic and Dmitry Kibler, they've basically come up with this software that can do it, and various other versions are available. But it does show you that if it's too good to be true.
So do we have a problem with that? Because actually that empowers people, it communicates with people. I don't really have a problem with that.
No, it's a problem.
Why is it a problem?
Because what it means is that people can be made to say anything.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Absolutely.
No, but as long as there was some way of just justifying, making sure that you are saying the correct thing.
This is the problem about the election
But if that's
side.
political campaigning, for example, I don't really have a problem because then you're reaching out to people who don't necessarily have English
Well,
as a
they
first
had a
language.
problem in the BJP part because they didn't confess that they couldn't speak all these dialects. So they disowned that. The mayor is under a lot of pressure in New York. And we're going to find more and more of these deep fake videos are getting more and more realistic.
I was scammed by somebody phoning me from my bank, and they were using a voice changer. So they were a woman with an Irish accent.
Yes.
It was actually a man with a Jamaican accent.
Yes.
And I know because I made him angry and he switched it off.
Oh, is that right? Right.
You've got to be so careful.
You've got to be so careful.
And particularly, I mean, the thing is, we're relatively savvy, but if you are, you know, not savvy, then obviously the problem.
But even the savvy ones, they've conned people out of things. You
I'm
can have
sure.
your boss making a phone call to demand money being transferred. So watch out out there. It's dangerous.
Talking of which, Andrew, thank you very much indeed for coming in.
To see you, both.
Lovely to see you as well. Very quickly, good morning, doctors, to Debs and David. Good morning to both of you. I have finally got my husband up early enough to watch you both. Very happy Saturday to you. Well, happy Saturday to all of you as well. After the break, we're going to be talking about the state of the railways. This is on the back of the Labour Party saying they want to renationalise the railways. Is that the right thing to do? I'm going to be talking to Bruce Williamson from the campaign group Rail Future. Do not go anywhere. This is talkTV broadcasting live.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, very good morning to you. It's just after 8 o'clock now on Saturday, April the 27th. I'm David Bull. This is talkTV. Thank you very much indeed for your company. Now, as you would expect, we have great news for you today. It is Gummy Bear Day. Yes, a day celebrating the chewy sweets. Yum. Also, it's the Ray Scarecrow Festival taking place in Ray in Lancashire. So what is that, I hear you ask? Well, villagers adorn their homes with scarecrows. There is also a lantern procession of scarecrows and a scarecrow competition. And today is also Marconi Day. It's a day to celebrate the father of the radio. The Italian wireless communicator pioneer. His name, Guglielmo Marconi. Yes, these Italians get everywhere, don't they, Gabriella, my lovely producer? Right, let's start today's show, shall we?
Today's fascinating facts.
So today's fascinating facts. On this day in 1667, the blind, impoverished John Milton sold the copyright of Paradise Lost for a whopping £10. On this day in 1749, the first official performance of Handel's Music for the Royal Fireworks in Green Park in London took place. Now, sadly, it finished early because there was an outbreak of fire. Handel stuck to conducting whilst the audience ran for their lives. And on this day in 1840, the foundation stone for the new Palace of Westminster, also known as the Houses of Parliament, or Westminster Palace, was laid by the wife of the architect, Sir Charles Barry. And those are today's fascinating facts. Well, Dr. Rennie Hunderkamp, my other wife, is in this morning.
You don't have any other wives.
Not anymore.
You have me.
No.
Think
Sarah and I divorced yesterday.
Exactly. Think yourself lucky.
Indeed. I've got some other ones for you. On this day in 1939, and this is actually very important because it may well be coming back, conscription for men aged 20 to 21 was announced in Britain. 1944 was the birth of Michael Fish. Now, Michael Fish, if you don't know, was
the October storm.
Yes, was a British meteorologist. He became infamous in the wake of the Great Storm, which was in 1987. And I remember that really vividly, actually. Hang on a minute, 87. So, my first year at university. So, do you remember this? Well, remind us what happened.
So there was a big storm coming, but he famously went on TV and said actually it wasn't going to be very serious and we didn't have to worry. And when we all woke up the next morning, there were no trees left and there were no roofs on houses.
There was a bus on its side outside.
I had a car accident on the A12.
Why were you driving?
Because I was out and about and I had to get back into London and the weather was atrocious.
Well, so he said on air, and there is this great clip, well, if you're so he said this lady has called in and is there going to be a storm? And he said, well, if you're watching, don't worry, there isn't. That evening, the worst storm to hit southeast England since 1703. Oh, my goodness. Caused record damage and killed 18 people, which isn't very funny at all.
But I mean, Seven Oaks become One Oak.
Yeah. I think the whole thing, I mean, honestly, poor man. In 1968, the Abortion Act legalised abortion in women. In Britain, I don't know, obviously I was thinking about women. When pregnancy could endanger the physical or mental health of a woman or child. And talking of stalwarts, in 1992, the House of Commons elected a woman to the post of Speaker for the first time.
Was that Betty?
Betty Boothroyd, the 62-year-old Labour MP for West Bromwich. I thought she was a tremendous speaker.
She handed me my first degree.
Did she?
She was
she
the Chancellor
of...
yeah.
Yes, of which university was this?
I did that with the Open University.
Oh, very good. Yes, I thought she was an amazing speaker, actually. Lots of messages coming in. I'm asking this morning about Labour's plans to nationalise the railways, because this is their flagship policy. It's very scant on detail. They talk about renationalising, improving the railway. They've been put on the spot and said, does it mean that rail fares go down? Because rail fares in this country are far too high. There is no answer to that. They can't guarantee that. And then that begs the question, why are you doing it then if it doesn't improve the service and if it doesn't make it cheaper? Why on earth would you embark upon that?
Essentially, I think they're doing it because there is such dissatisfaction in the country over the railways that I think if you say to people, shall we just renationalise it, it's a popular idea.
It's an ideology, isn't
yes.
it? But it's not, but unless I can be convinced with the detail of that. So I'm asking this morning, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the UK's railways and why? Well, so many of you are getting in touch about this. Darren, good morning to you. Darren says, as a bus driver, train drivers really annoy me on how much money they get compared to us and what we have to do compared to them. I live in Banbury. When I visit my mum in London, it's an hour on the train, but it costs £60 return. I know.
It's shocking.
Banbury to Blackpool is £100 return. So a car it is. Darren in Banbury, I love you too. I'm really going to miss it on the TV. Well, that's a really good segue into telling you that we're not going anywhere. We are actually going completely digital. From Monday, you can join Talk on DAB+, on your smart speaker or on any connected device. So you can join Mike Graham for breakfast. Julia, Hartley Brewer, she's on from 10. Jeremy Carr, weekdays from 4. The home of common sense is back, and both Renee and I will be back here next weekend. And actually, it was really nice. I got so many messages yesterday.
I know. People were really worried that we weren't going to be here.
I said I was going to be in Barbados, actually.
We were worried.
Well, no, I mean, but actually, I think, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? It's the brave new world. Is actually what is fascinating is how people's viewing has changed.
Yes.
So we're old enough where you go to a television and you there's a certain order of channels. You think, well, I'll have a look what's on. Kids don't do that.
So I was thinking about this last night because I don't have a TV in the house. You know this, but I do watch things and I do it on my computer. So wherever I go in the house, I just carry this around and I have talkTV on and watching it on there.
So if you watch, say, Netflix, for example, and I was trying to explain this to my mum, she was like, oh, this is very complicated. And I said, well, but you watch Netflix, you press a button and you go to the app. And there is no difference between that. But actually what this shows is the way that media is changing.
Absolutely.
And the way consumption of media is changing as well. We also know, particularly for our younger viewers, they all watch online, they watch clips, they don't... I don't know, do you think young people have a lack of attention?
Oh, don't get me on it. Well, I think that's what they've been bred to have, isn't it? Because they're being taken down the algorithms on their mobile phone all of the time, which takes them from clip to clip to clip to clip. So nothing is being delved into. So you and I see a headline and we then go to the story and we read it because the headline often bears no resemblance to what's
and that's
in
the problem.
the story.
And actually, I like the algorithms where it says, do you want to read this before you repost it?
Yeah.
Because often it's just reposted. Well, let's talk more about the railways, shall we? Because so many of you are getting in touch. I purchased, this is Paul in Wiltshire, he's a veteran. I purchased a veteran's rail card. I can never use it due to the rail strikes. It did give us good discounts, but honestly, the state of the railways and strikes, I give up. I have to drive now. Good morning, this is Alison. Good morning to you. Railways, a definite 9 out of 10, says Alison. I travelled from Cromer to Southend in Essex yesterday. 3 trains, all on time. The staff were lovely. Please keep up these useful discussions. The reason I want to talk about this is Labour has made it a key policy as we come into the general elections. Now, what you may not know or not realise is that national rail strikes by train drivers are entering a third, yes, you heard that right, a third summer. with a series of rolling walkouts, one region at a time during May. So members of ASLEF, this is that union, they aim to halt thousands of trains on the 7th, 8th and 9th of May, and commuters who normally go to the office will be targeted on Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays. Now, what they want to do, quite frankly, is to disrupt services on 14 rail firms in England that are controlled by the UK government and represented by the Rail Delivery Group. That is not just what they're doing. They're also putting in 6 days of overtime bans, causing further cancellations from the 6th to the 11th of May. The first day is the early May Day bank holiday. The last one coincides with Take That performing in Manchester. This has been going on for an awfully long time, and taxpayers are throwing tons of money at the railways. We'll talk about what they want, but Labour's response to this is, well, we need to nationalise the railways. Is that the answer? Well, I'm delighted to say joining us now is Bruce Williamson from the campaign group Rail Future. Good morning to you.
Good morning, David.
Really good to talk to you. I mean, I think pretty much all our viewers and listeners feel exactly the same. It's far too expensive. It's unreliable. You never know when the trains are going to run. It's not value for money.
I agree. And the expense issue, the cost of rail tickets, is absolutely in the hands of the government. Let's not forget that the government sets the fare level and they take all the money. So the money that you pay for your rail ticket isn't going to the train operating company, it's going to the Department for Transport. And it's a very deliberate policy that the government have been doing for years and years now to sort of, to keep jacking up prices as much as they can get away with.
But they would say, the government would say, well, hang on a minute, we've actually bailed out the railways. During COVID, they bailed them out 16 billion quid. It costs 5 billion quid a year to subsidise the railways. They say we want our cash back.
Well, they ain't going to get it. OK, but they had no choice to bail out the railways during COVID. The alternative was just to see the whole rail network collapse. And we need the railways on a sort of day-to-day level for practical reasons. It's great for the economy and so on. Every rail system, in the world really requires a subsidy, but other countries seem to do it better than us and put on trains that are affordable.
So we are chucking £90 a second into the railways, which seems extraordinary, £2.8 billion in additional cash over the year. Now, so when we look at other countries and we look at what we've got in this country, we're a relatively small landmass. That's the other thing I don't understand. It also goes back, if I remember rightly, to 1963 and Beeching. If you remember, of course, he shut 5,000 miles or thereabouts of line. I think they lost 2,363 stations. We had an incredible network. They decided to shut a lot of it because it was unprofitable. Does it stem from Beeching? Is it just poor management of privatisation? Or is it the fact that privatisation doesn't work in the railways?
Well, it's a bit of everything. I mean, Beeching made a fantastic mistake, really. I mean, most people think that Beeching got it wrong. He mistakenly assumes that you could just chop out the loss-making bits and be left with a profitable core. But it just doesn't work like that, partly because the unprofitable bits feed in to the profitable bits.
Exactly.
And so what happened was when you shut your branch line, the commuters didn't drive to the nearest station. They just drove all the way to work. They stopped using the railway altogether. So it was part of the lifeblood of the railway was chopped out at that point. So that didn't help. Privatisation, it's sort of been neither a failure nor a disaster. The trains are still running. They're a safe railway. But yet the transformation that we were promised about lower fares and competition, it just hasn't happened. The railway is a natural monopoly. Way back, we favoured, if we were going to privatising it wholesale as one lump, because what you want on the railways is integration. And the current model of privatisation really has sort of fragmented the railway, and that, helps to make it less efficient. It adds costs. You've got so many subcontractors and so on. It's all a bit of a mess.
So I completely get. So let's take air travel, for example. I completely understand why the privatisation of that works, why you've got independent companies who are competing for your ticket price or whatever it is because they can fly different routes and so on. I do not understand with the railway, because you are set to the same infrastructure, aren't you? You only have one set of rails, multiple operators. How can that... And you mentioned something just then. You said the model doesn't work. So is it that's the problem?
Yeah, I think it is. It's like I say, it's the fragmentation that is the problem. Okay, some people, would argue that why are we letting train operating companies make a profit out of us? If I'm paying, 100 quid for my ticket, I want 100 quid of that to go towards running the railways, not 90 quid and a tenner for the fat cats. I don't think that's entirely fair. The operating margins for the train operating companies are really, really tight. They're making like 1 or 2% profit, but still, some people would argue that that's 1 or 2% more than it should be. Again, I've come back to this notion of fragmentation. It's also worth noting that the railway is part nationalised already. We have 4 train operating companies that are state-owned. LNER has failed 3 times, and each time it's sort of lapsed back into public ownership. So it could be argued that what Labour are proposing is a kind of continuation of what's happened under the Tories.
So let's look at what Labour has proposed. The railways will come under government control within 5 years of a Labour government. Passengers will be automatically refunded for delayed journeys. They then talk about the mobile phone apps to automate the delay repay scheme. The question is this the answer? There's a really interesting article in The Spectator saying this is not a plan at all. They want to eliminate fragmentation. It's basically a list of goals. Bureaucracy, waste, bring down costs, all the stuff that everyone wants to see. But they're adding more bureaucracy because they're actually setting up these 2 other quangos, Great British Railways and the Passenger Standards Authority. Does that make any sense to you?
Well, partly. I mean, it certainly makes sense if you're going to nationalise the railway to just let the existing contracts lapse. That's a very easy way to do it, and that doesn't have any cost. So that will work. Great British Railways, of course, is a proposal. I think it was Boris Johnson's idea, wasn't it? And that's happening anyway. It certainly makes sense to have, an overarching body with rail expertise that oversees how the railways are run. And if they get that right, that will be a good thing. But of course, bureaucrats tend to act like bureaucrats and get in the way. And that's part of the problem we've had so far.
Now, Labour is insisting the renationalisation will pay for itself. That's the 800 million to 1 billion a year spent by private companies on rail investment will be realised through efficiency gains. Now, the Institute of Economic Affairs has said the Labour proposals are lacking in detail. They are full of contradictions. They have no understanding of how markets work. They talk about bureaucracy being scrapped, but obviously they're now putting more bureaucracy in. And they also say the huge omission from these plans is how to handle an oversized, overpaid and relentlessly militant workforce. And that brings me nicely into these ASLEF strikes. The reason people aren't travelling by rail is that you cannot rely on the service. Everyone seems to be on strike. We're in the 3rd year of it. They want 4 plus 4%, and 4 days a week as a train driver, you get £65,000. Not bad.
Well, it sounds good, but it's a responsible job. I mean, it probably compares to airline pilots, I don't know, or other people in similar jobs, and it's certainly a lot less than the Prime Minister gets paid. Both sides really are digging their heels in. The government just doesn't want to concede to to the unions generally, but to a pay deal that matches inflation. So the unions would argue that they're being asked to accept the pay cut, no matter how generous you think they're paid at the moment. No one likes a pay cut. So one has sympathy with them, but both sides are digging their heels in. The government could settle this easily if they wanted to, but I think they're just picking a fight, really.
So how do you envisage this rolling out? Obviously, it will depend who wins the general election. Do you think full nationalisation is A, possible, and B, is it likely? And I just want to draw your attention, which you will know more than I do, about the rolling stock, because they will have to hire the rolling stock from Roscos. And of course, if they decide they want to buy that all back, that's about 10 billion quid.
Yeah, the Roscos, I think, are a problem. The rolling stock companies. So your train operating companies, maybe people don't understand that, they don't own the trains. They have to lease them in for another company. And certainly in the past, those companies have made huge profits. So that's a kind of source of, if you like, inefficiency or extra cost. The government always has procured the purchase of trains because it's such a big long-term investment. They can't leave it to a short-term franchise. So that will probably continue. But I think if they buy out the Roscoes, yes, that will cost money, but I think it will also make savings in the longer term as well.
Really good to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming in. Bruce Williamson from the campaign group Rail Future. Keep all of your messages coming in. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the UK's railways and why? Gary says it's time to remove all public funding from the railways. This seems very extreme, but the salary of train drivers is madness. Also, 100,000 extra civil servants since COVID. Good morning, says Claire. Good morning to you, Claire. Good morning to you both. I love the show. Thank you very much. I travelled to London, Euston and back from Manchester on Thursday. The train down was delayed by 50 minutes and the train back was delayed by 35 minutes. To make matters worse, out of 4 trains travelling back to Manchester within a 90-minute period, 3 were cancelled. So my train was rammed and people were standing in the aisles for the entire 2-hour journey home. It was horrible. So many messages.
So many. I mean, I've got Cooperman. I've been on a train once now in the last 25 years. They never go where I want, when I want. They're ruinously expensive, cheaper and more convenient to drive or fly, even if you need to hire a car. And comparing a train driver to an airline pilot, that's got to be the most stupid claim you'll hear anywhere this weekend.
Well, why wouldn't I throw back that the trains have a lot of people on them? And it was interesting. Yeah. I went to Brussels the other day.
They are guided by tracks, though.
They are guided by tracks, but obviously there is danger, inherent danger in that.
And we've seen that.
And when you see the numbers of people pouring off those trains, obviously you are in a position of responsibility. So one might argue that actually they do need to be well paid.
I would say that the training to be a train driver is probably not quite as intense as to be an airline pilot, but yes, I agree. But I don't think they need to be paid what they are with the conditions that they have.
And that's the problem, because what ASLEF is pushing back on isn't actually about the money, it's changes to working practice.
Yeah.
Now, if we are actually going to get a railway fit for the future, we need to change working practices, because technology has evolved.
Technology has evolved, and actually so has the way that the unions managed to negotiate these contracts many, many years ago. Time moves on. People want more for their taxpayer-funded things. So if it's going to be taxpayer-funded things, I think the unions are going to have less say.
I agree. Keep all of your messages coming in, please. Tell us what you think of the UK railways, and also what is the solution to them in your opinion. We'll take a break now. After the break, it's Head to Head with Lauren Bell-Cross and John Elliott, MBE. This is talkTV. Back to Weekend Breakfast. Can you believe it? The time is 8:27 already. I'm David Bull. Thank you very much indeed for all your messages. We're talking about the state of British railways, and this has really got you going. David says, Gary, the track infrastructure is owned and run by the government. The minimum service levels expected from train operators are set by the government. Yes, but not enforced. And the maximum fares are set by the government. So to what extent is our rail service really in private hands? Very good point. It strikes me that it is already run by the government, but with private money. So all that will change when it's renationalised. And all that will happen is it will be run by the government with public money. And we know how badly the government spends public money. That's Mitch in North London. Lovely doctors. I stopped using the railways, but buses are no better. I live on a major route to Birmingham. 5 buses shown on expensive digital bus stops put in before the Commonwealth Games for our new fast bendy bus. It was money wasted because, like the old buses, they never arrived. Thank you, Helen.
Oh, they were dangerous as well. That was the thing.
Oh, I like the bendy
but
buses.
They were dangerous.
Well,
they killed people.
Yeah, because of course the streets were never designed. It's great if you're in an American city, which is all new and modern. What else have you got?
So we've got Mike, who says, morning, Renee, best show of the week, railways.
Morning, Renee. Where's David?
Sorry. Oh. Railways, I've only used the train once in the last 10 years to take my wife from Oxford to York for a couple of days away. Very romantic. Not. I was 65 then. It was so oversubscribed we had to sit on the floor by the toilets.
Oh, that's horrific.
That's Mike and his wife for a romantic weekend, aged 65.
Not fair.
Come on. And then a funny one.
And, of course, you would have paid a pretty penny for
Exactly.
that. Yeah.
And that was first class. I don't know that. Jane says, fascinating fact for you, David.
Yes.
Milton's £10 would be worth 1,999.68 pence today.
Very good. Love that. Love that. Thank you very much. I do like my fascinating facts, as you know. Let's move on, though. It's time for Head to Head.
Head to head.
Well, joining us this morning, Lauren Bellcross, former Labour advisor. Joining him, John Elliott, MBE chairman of EPAC Limited. Good morning to the two.
Good morning, doctors.
Oh, it's very formal, yes, indeed. Now, shall we start with Humza Yousaf? Because this is quite a story. He says he is not going to resign as Scotland's First Minister. He says he will continue to carry on in the role. Now, he, as we know, is fighting for his political future ahead of a no-confidence vote next week. Now, he says he's absolutely going to win that vote. He hoped the Scottish Greens would change their mind about this. And, of course, I was talking about this yesterday morning. At the beginning of the day, he looked very confident. He felt he was ahead of the agenda. He'd done the right thing. It was actually welcomed by quite a lot of people. And then he realised that because of the weird mathematics that underpins all of this, he's now reliant on one particular person, isn't he? Ash Regan.
Who he previously described as no great loss to the SNP after she defected to Alex Salmond's party, the Alba Party. Yeah, I mean, President LBJ of the United States had one great rule of politics: learn how to count. And Humza Yousaf has clearly not learned how to count. He's failed to consider that actually annoying your
thank you. It's 8:30.
Annoying your coalition partners to the point of collapse might annoy them and might mean they're not going to back you in a confidence vote.
Is he going to survive?
I don't know that, to be honest. I think the fact that he is dependent on survival of one person who he's previously described as no great loss is not a great place to be in, and I think it's so uncertain, and he's put himself in such an awkward position that I don't know if he is going to survive. And a lot of his potentially SNP colleagues are going to say, well, actually, I think I could have a better crack at it than he has been in the short time he's been in charge.
John, you have run a very successful business, and running a political party is a bit like running a business. You rely on everyone. It's teamwork and all the rest of it. I mean, he said Ash Regan was no great loss. I thought the first rule was be nice to everyone, because you meet them twice in this world, once on the way up and once on the way down.
Very true. Can I say something totally different? Has devolution worked?
No.
Are the Scots better off? And it's costing us money, isn't it?
And so what do you think?
Two options we've got for the Scots. Become independent, and let's work with them to do that if that's what they choose, or join the club in the same rules as the rest of us.
So that is fascinating. Well, let's ask Lauren that. So I also agree with you. Haven't we just replicated all these bodies? So you've got an assembly in Wales, you've got what's going on in Scotland, but we have no English Parliament, and yet we have a United Kingdom Parliament. Has it been a waste of money?
I'm not sure. I think one of the criticisms of devolution that I do have is I think it was Lord Robertson, I could be wrong, one of the architects of devolution said, when Labour were backing it, it would kill off Scottish nationalism for good. It's clearly objectively failed in that respect. But I'd be hesitant for abolishing devolution, because it then creates a tricky precedent of, well, you don't like how they're voting, so therefore you're taking them away.
No, why don't you actually say that it's economies of scale, and actually we're a very small, united country, or multiple countries. We are united. The clue is in the United Kingdom. We know support for independence.
But then would we get rid of the Assembly in Northern Ireland? In the same token.
Good point.
And I think that would create a dangerous precedent.
Yeah, you can't have two governments in one country.
Well, they're different.
Because it just conflicts, especially if they've got different views.
But they are different countries, aren't they? England,
Wales. But we are and we're not.
We're a united
one or the other.
kingdom.
Well, that's
we're a country.
I mean, that's interesting. Yeah, but people will argue they are independent countries.
Basically,
but devolution isn't fully. It's not fully devolved, because they don't have certain powers, do they? So they're not autonomous governments.
But then they also have other powers that we don't have down here. So let me give you one great example. So when we brought in tuition fees, the Scottish MEPs that sat in MSPs that sat in the Houses of Parliament were able to vote for the tuition fees to go up to £9,000, and then not let English students go across the border and pay the lower fee that Scottish students
Worse
pay.
than that, European students, I think, when we were still in the EU, didn't get to pay for their education, whereas English students going to university in Scotland did pay.
How would you bring that about politically? If John is right,
you scrap it.
But how would you?
Let the Scots choose. Let the Scots choose. Go on your own way, and we'll work with you and help you. or join us.
But I don't think they want to.
100%.
But
There's two options.
They don't want to go on their own way. I think.
Well, then so join us.
But
no halfway
they
houses.
also want devolution. I think
But
if
all,
you want...
all it's done, surely, Lorna, is double up the back office,
That's true.
double up the quangos,
More politicians,
more quangos trying to achieve the same thing, and then fighting with each other for one-upmanship.
I'm glad you brought this up, actually.
Yeah, it's a good morning discussion.
Well,
like
I watched the Welsh Assembly the other day. I don't know why I ended up watching the Welsh Assembly.
You really need to get out more.
I really do need to get out more. I was watching the Welsh Assembly, and essentially, when you look at their track record, if you said, well, actually, Wales is functioning fantastically well, it shows devolution works. It's not. It isn't. It replicates everything. You've got multiple structures, as John says. Any efficiency has to be derived from actually having a concerted government and having, I think, to have one legislature.
I disagree, because I think there's so many examples both across Europe and in the United States of regional or regional levels of devolution. In the US, it's state levels, United States, clues in the name. But even in somewhere like Spain, you've got the regional government in Andalusia looking after the regional services there. I don't think
it doesn't mean it's right.
Yeah, and also in the States, don't forget, you do have that, you're absolutely right, until someone doesn't agree with the policy, and then they have to rather expensively take it through every level of court until they get to the Supreme Court, which is not partisan.
I think there's a lot of inefficiencies and stuff that's done wrong in certain devolved administrations. I think, for example, why on earth was Humza Yousaf meeting with President Erdogan of Turkey with no Foreign Office officials present? Your remit does not extend to foreign affairs.
Indeed.
You shouldn't be doing that. You should be focusing on the powers that you do have. So I think there's...
But you could say that about other politicians. Why was Sadiq Khan, for example, having meetings with world leaders when that's outside his remit as well? Let's just go back to where we are, because devolution is a bit of a tangent. Oh, you think he's gone?
Yeah.
So, interestingly, not only is he fighting for his political future, the Scottish Tories plan a vote of no confidence not only in him, but Labour has now said they plan a similar vote on the entire Scottish government. So, René says he's gone. Is the Scottish government gone, John?
It doesn't matter. They're just playing politics. It's irrelevant.
Well, it's relevant to the people of Scotland.
Not really.
Do you not think?
No. The Scots are worse off now than than we are in the health service, the education system. That it has devolution has not worked.
And yet they have more money via the Barnett formula per person in Scotland than we have.
But that's why it is relevant to them, because if they want to now get rid of the SNP government and potentially go to new elections if no new government is able to be formed, then it is relevant.
Well, okay, so let's just... I wasn't expecting this conversation, but let's go... let's now say we're talking about the Barnett formula, which you're right, you get more per capita in Scotland because of some crazy equation. And if John is right to say that we're all on parity, why don't we say, fine, we abolish the Barnett formula?
I think, look, it's a question a lot of politicians haven't come up with a convincing answer to, I don't think, and it's something that will continue to persist in politics and these kind of discussion rules, because no one can give a good answer.
The ratio of MPs are greater as well, actually. We have more MPs per head of population than we do in England.
That's interesting.
One country, one government.
Although they are multiple countries under a banner of the United Kingdom.
One or the other. One country.
But with that,
two countries.
but with that, actually,
no halfway houses.
No, but then you end up erasing any kind of regional identity. And if you say,
absolutely right as well.
No, but if you go to Northern,
well, hang on a minute. Aren't you proud to be
Ireland,
English? Are you proud to be English?
Yes, I'm British. British first.
British first.
English second. But North East third. County Durham fourth.
Well, yeah,
Bishop Auckland fifth.
But hang on a minute. If we then, so what we're saying then is we're now going to get rid of England as well. I think you'd have a hell of a fight.
But whatever you call it, irrelevant. You can't have two...
It's not irrelevant to the Scots if you're saying we've got one country.
Of course, it's irrelevant to the English.
Of course it isn't relevant. They'll be better off under that system.
Well, let's just go back to the idea...
It's economies of scale.
I'm just quite interested in this idea of devolution, because you're right. And if you look at the capita, how many people are in each of those countries? When you look at the figures in Scotland, life expectancy saw the sharpest fall in 40 years. Drug deaths have soared. The attainment gap is wider than ever. The NHS is broken. They have one of the largest budget deficits in the developed world.
You know what? I'm quite happy that now people are starting to pay attention to the SNP's actual record in government, because I remember, especially during the COVID period, that media were fawning over Nicola Sturgeon, basically saying, oh, why can't she run the United Kingdom? Well, actually, she was playing politics with a pandemic. She was saying, oh, I'm going to announce all these measures half an hour before Boris does, so I can see more on it.
And actually, she would choose to announce measures that the UK government hadn't done,
and
just
then
to
they
be
get
different.
bounced into them, yeah.
But then if we're going to do that, we need to compare Wales and Dreyfus record, and this is a Labour government in Wales, and it has been now for a couple of decades, and they have the worst parameters for health, education, everything there, transport, traffic. So actually, before people think about what's going on just in Scotland, they need to look across the devolution countries and think, well, hang on a minute, what have they had and how well has it done?
Well, I think the Welsh will say they've had a lot of their funding from Westminster cut, and, you know, despite...
The Welsh get more per capita than the English as well.
But despite, you know, repeated headlines about how awful Labour are, they seem to do very well there and seem to win elections.
Doesn't this go back to the bigger point that with devolved governments, they can always then go to the default of blaming the UK government?
But the same formula gives Wales more money as well.
Maybe not as much as Scotland.
Playing games.
Well, let's talk about politicians, because there's a great article, I think it's in the Times this morning. Professor Sir John Curtis, who we love, as we know, is a professor of politics. He's described in this article as a wild-haired polling guru. He says, look, Humza Yousaf, everyone kind of likes him, he's a nice guy, but his fundamental problem, it says John Curtis, he's a nice man, he's intellectually able, he doesn't have presence. Is that the problem?
I think it probably is, because it's that presence that leads you to build alliances and leads you to build coalitions to be able to deliver your programme of government. And this is something he has struggled with ever since he got in, and the manner of his election to succeed Nicola Sturgeon, I think probably hasn't helped matters.
What did Sturgeon have that captivated the Scots? What was it? Was it her charisma? Was it that she believed that she was fighting for their freedom from oppression from this nasty United Kingdom?
Probably was a good politician.
I think, I think that's probably accurate.
But what we need is leadership, not politicians.
What does that look like?
Someone with vision and wisdom. One person.
And principle.
And principle. You can only have one person leading, and then he employs... Look at a business. What's a successful business? Dyson. James Dyson will direct that business personally. He'll listen to other people, talk to other people, and he'll use others to implement it. Sensing direction and implementation are two different skills. The person at the top must be someone you can see and look at the long term and get other people who are good at implementing. If you're good at options and looking at visions, you're bad at implementation.
So that then begs the question, a poverty of great politicians, I think, currently. I can see very few people who have a vision, who have drive, determination, who understand the direction this country needs to go in. Is that because we are getting the wrong people into politics?
Oh, that's a very broad question for a Saturday morning.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
But on the sort of the more serious end of it, you have MPs who are quitting because they cannot take the stress of it. You had Mike Freer saying, me and my partner are being threatened, having death threats every day, and I can't take the strain of this. And it's a serious point of, yes, we need people with leadership and vision, but if people would rather go into the private sector and make money and say, I want that's a better career option here.
Where did it go wrong? Where did it go wrong? Because we never had that before.
Well, social media doesn't help, does it?
No, agreed.
Yeah, I think, it's a very broad, big question to which I don't have an immediate answer for.
Would you go into politics, John?
No.
Why?
I don't want to follow the party line all the time. You know, we don't need politicians. We need people to run the country. The system isn't working. It's been here for 200 years. It doesn't work.
But is that the politicians' fault, or is that the civil servants' fault?
It's the system. The system. Never blame the people.
But that's a very good point. Is it the politicians?
No.
Because they put forward a manifesto, say, and the public vote on that, and then they try and implement, and then it's up to the civil servants to implement.
Yes, that's right. But then the person at the top should select the people who are going to implement. And they implement his policy or her policies.
Well, I also said yesterday I think the manifesto should be legally binding.
Oh, I agree.
And that way you know what you're voting on.
Just very quickly, out of interest, so that you know, so public spending in Wales, 13,401 per person. Scotland, 13,881.
Yeah.
Northern Ireland, 14,062. England, 11,549.
So that is wrong, and we need to address that.
To, like, in some cases, deprivation, so more deprived areas getting more resources?
I can't answer that.
In the
that's called rewarding failure.
Oh, that's really interesting.
That's a good idea, isn't it? Reward failure.
Reward failure. Right, on that note, we will pause and go for a break. We'll be talking about Rwanda. Rishi Sunak, has he just scored a goal? We're hearing that he may have had some success. We'll talk about that after this break. This is talkTV. Welcome back to Weekend Breakfast Time, 8:46 now on Saturday, April the 27th. In the studio, Lauren Bell-Cross, former Labour advisor, John Elliott, MBE, chairman of EBAC Limited. Now, the Safety of Rwanda bill has gone through. Emmanuel Macron has been hitting back at, I think this is kind of like a barbed insult at the United Kingdom. He suggested that using African third countries for asylum processing would create a geopolitics of cynicism and new dependencies. He then claimed the policy would prove totally ineffective. Now, obviously, James Cleverly has accused critics of Rwanda of willfully ignoring the progress that has been made in that country in the last 30 years. Where do you stand on this? I mean, to be fair to Rishi Sunak, he's had quite a good week. He got the legislation through. It doesn't mean it's going to work. It doesn't mean it's going to work. He got it through. He said it was going to go through. It went through.
I'm so bored of talking about the Rwanda bill.
2
2
years.
years we've been talking about this. Look, if a flight takes off, we'll see how much of a deterrent it is. I'm unconvinced that it will be much of a deterrent. I'm going to do something slightly brave on Talk Radio, which is I'm going to say I have sympathies with the French on this, which is probably not the advisable thing to say.
Really bad idea.
Get the ire of the audience. But in the French's defence, the migrants are not going to Calais or France because they want to be in France or Calais. They're coming there because they want to be in this country.
Yes,
and
but we're paying them millions, £500 million.
But then it's on us to sort out how we deal with it. We can't just, whenever it's inconvenient for us, to say, oh, well, you know, it's the French's fault. Why aren't the French doing more? They're coming here.
Well, why aren't they doing more?
Well, I actually am going to agree with you a little bit, because I think if it weren't so attractive for them to come here, if they didn't get housing, food, free education, free healthcare immediately, they'd stay in France.
Yeah. John?
The immigrants must be laughing at us, mustn't they? They come over and they tell a pack of lies so they can stay here. Even if they shouldn't stay, we can't send them anywhere. The answer is you've got to stop them at the border. It's that simple.
So how would you do that?
Well, I'd either turn the boats back. That's provocative, isn't it?
It is provocative,
but
as someone found out on television this week.
That would save lives in the long run, because a few days of doing that, they would stop.
So okay.
But another alternative,
yeah.
As soon as they arrive here, lock them up. The criminals.
Which was the idea behind the Bibi Stockholm, for example.
Well, no, it wasn't, because it wasn't locked.
It wasn't locked, but
lock
the
them up,
idea...
you tell them.
If you remember going back to the bases, the original idea was that they were going to do that, and I think they then said their human rights would be infringed, and therefore they have to be able to go shopping.
They would have been happy to be there if they were escaping a horrible situation that was making them fear for their lives. They wouldn't care where they were.
I think
they're not. That's happening. That's happening. They're not escaping somewhere where it's bad. That's France.
But a lot of them.
The criminals
are.
The criminals.
Not everyone is a criminal.
All of them are criminals by coming to this country without passports and through the proper borders. It's illegal to do that.
I think the issue is a systemic one. I think a lot of politicians have made careers out of making big headlines and being nasty and being seen to be tough on migration. Actually, do you know what was scary? Is under Blair, the deportation rate was ridiculously higher than it is now. And now everyone pretty much gets accepted, and you get ridiculous cases where foreign criminals commit crimes in the UK, and then we say in Afghanistan, and you say, oh, they've committed a sex crime here, we can't send them back to Afghanistan because of the potential impact of them.
There are lots of things I don't really understand about, you know, they've cleared the legacy backlog. What does that mean?
It means they've let them all go.
You've let them in. You've let in 70% of those people by clearing the legacy backlog. I just want to ask...
They're laughing at us. The immigrants are laughing at us.
I also think it's the issue that there is having worked in MP's office, there's so many people who do the right thing and try and come here legally, and they try and go things the right way, and they get failed by the system, and they get laughed at by people who pay...
So safe and legal routes is key to this,
I think
far as
you've got to incentivise doing things the right way, because if, as is clearly happening in practice, it is easier for you to pay a couple of grand to a people smuggler, get on a dinghy and get here, and you're going to be guaranteed housing, as opposed to having to toil, not being allowed to work, and suffering for 5 years.
So isn't René's point then valid? Which is actually, if you came across illegally, you get put in a camp, you're locked, the doors are locked, and you then are waited to be processed.
You're warm and safe.
And also, well, let me just tell you about Michael Martin, because this is interesting. Ireland's Deputy Prime Minister Michael Martin says the spectre of being removed to Rwanda is now causing UK-based asylum seekers to cross to Ireland. He then says this is having a major impact on Ireland, leaving people fearful of being detained by the UK authorities and getting transferred to Central Africa. So therefore, I then start to think, It's working, isn't it?
I'm going to be slightly cynical here and suggest that perhaps the Irish Deputy Prime Minister is doing what a lot of Irish politicians do very well, and it's blaming the Brits for stuff that goes wrong in their own country.
And there's a lot going on with immigration.
I think the immigration, the scale of immigration that's happening in Ireland is probably more overwhelming there than it is here. And I think it's very easy to blame the Brits about something than to have to acknowledge something that's gone wrong.
When we're talking about legal immigration, John, we're talking about 6,000 people have come here so far this year. Last year, legally, 745,000, 750,000 people were allowed into this country. We've got 770,000 kids under 25, not in education, employment or training. Where has it gone wrong? Why are we not employing kids in this country?
The solution is we need better people running the country. It's that simple.
What has happened to the incentivisation? Why are young people so disenfranchised to work?
Well, because they get rewarded for failure. They get rewarded for not working. You know, the people go into shops stealing stuff, and they'll wrongly claim an illness that doesn't exist.
But why is
and they can get away with it. It's very simple to it.
But why is it that the numbers of people coming here legally have skyrocketed since Brexit? Because I think since Brexit, it was a lot easier for people.
Hang on a minute. So why are you linking that to Brexit? Surely, hang on a minute. Wait a minute. No. Because you're conflicting two things. What the government has done is they've decided to let in 750,000 people. It's not because actually Brexit is irrelevant because we could train our own people to do stuff. It's not about relying on cheap labour.
We then have to pay them more, which a lot of companies are reluctant
to. So pay them more.
Exactly, I agree. We should pay people more.
Do you know what we should do? I think we should stop all immigration, legal and illegal, for a set period of time, 2 years, 5 years, whilst we get our young people into work, into houses,
and
into
that is
education.
the policy of one particular political party, but obviously I can't say anything because we're in murder at the moment. But just very interesting to see how that is going. Rishi Sunak was out running as well, as we saw with, what's that man called?
Hardest Geezer.
Hardest Geezer. I actually thought Rishi Sunak looked all right. John, do you think if, let's say, in 12 weeks or whenever they think the first plane can take off, a plane takes off to Rwanda, we start to see inflation come down, it gets sunny, can he survive, Rishi Sunak?
I think he can survive, actually. I think all of these by-elections are irrelevant, really. Very few people turn out and people are making a statement. When it comes to the general election, they've got to think about, do we want the alternative? And that people will think about that very hard. So I think, but I don't know.
It will depend on the scale of losses. If there's
John's right, isn't it? People vote differently in the local.
They do.
Ignore the by-elections.
And turnout will be interesting because now obviously you have to carry photographic ID with you when you turn up to the polls.
Good.
So it'll be interesting to see how
Which
that
I
affects.
think is excellent.
Well, one man, one vote.
But it'll be interesting to see how that affects
But
turnout.
not for your postal vote that I did mine this week. Just comes in the post.
You don't have to have ID for that.
You're not going to send off a scanned photocopy of your ID.
Postal voting breaks all the rules.
But I think what we should be doing is reverting people from postal votes. Every single year you have to apply.
Yeah.
Or whenever.
I've had a postal vote now for 20 years. I never have to.
Yeah, I think.
We should ban them. We shouldn't be allowed.
I don't think that's good enough.
I'm so lazy.
What you've got is one man or one woman, one vote.
Yep.
Vote in secret.
Yep.
Yes.
And all vote on the same day.
Yes.
Postal voting breaks all those rules.
It does, it does. John, I want to ask you about this because obviously you interview people for your company. John Lewis and Waitrose apparently are now sharing the questions they're going to ask in interviews beforehand. So apparently now job applicants can see the interview questions beforehand because it will make the process fairer. Yes, you heard that right. Lorna Bullitt, the firm's talent head, said interviews would be no less rigorous, but recruiters argue it would remove authenticity from answers. What are we doing? I thought the idea is we're meant to have the best people. Surely you put them in a room, you ask them a couple of questions. Do I like you? Was the answer good? Why are we telling them the questions?
I don't think it matters too much either, actually. Our recruitment is something based on ask. Attitude, skills and knowledge. Skills and knowledge you can measure. Attitude, which is what we're born with, is more difficult to assess.
Agreed, but if you've told them, you said knowledge. If you tell them what you're going to ask
I think the telling question is
It depends what the job is as well, actually.
It does.
Tell us about something that you found challenging in your life. And apparently they now get that in advance to think about. Now, when they're on the shop floor and a customer comes up with a difficult problem, they're not going to have been able to pre-prepare. No. They're going to have to think on their feet. Once again, we are taking away the skills because it's triggering for neurodiverse people so that they never have to do it.
It's just mollycoddling, I think. I know I'm probably meant to give the different opinion to this, but I think...
No, you're not.
You're meant to... there's always going to be challenges and
I agree.
scenarios that you're going to face a challenge in any professional environment. You can't over-prepare people for that. It's knowing how to deal with it.
Also, if you say, tell me
work.
about a challenging environment, you can ask your mates, right? Tell me a really, you know...
Or you
great...
can ask AI.
AI. It all goes back to AI. Thank you very much indeed to both of you, to Lauren Bell Cross and also John Elliott, MBE. That was today's Head-to-Head.
Head-to-Head.
Right, let's take a quick call. Andrew's in Merthyr Tydfil in South Wales. Good morning to you.
Morning.
Hi, Dave. I just got a quick question for you first.
Please.
Have you been working out?
Yeah, baby, I have. Why do you ask?
Oh no, I just thought like if you breathed out, you might take out for any.
Well, I know. So weirdly enough,
anyway,
I put a different shirt on this morning and I had to take it off because it was too tight.
Have you noticed I've moved over? I couldn't sit that
it's
close.
my bulging muscles. Anyway, that's not why you called, Andrew.
No, I'm talking about the rail service, and then you chat about devolution in general.
Yeah.
Now, the other day, it took me 3.5 hours to get from Merthyr Tydfil to Swansea. Now, as the crow flies, it shouldn't be taking that long. It's terrible. And the reason why Wales, a lot of these communities, like my town, are kind of stuck in poverty is because there's no infrastructure.
Agreed.
The train line from Merthyr to Cardiff hasn't changed since I've been born, which is 46 years. It's just disgraceful that it takes an hour to get from Merthyr to Cardiff.
I agree, and of course they're shoving money into things like from London to Birmingham, but you're right. So what about those communities in Wales, East Anglia, for example? You can't get around.
So do you think devolution has helped or hindered?
Oh, it's hindered. Like, as you know, I called a few times. I just got back from Australia, and the country over there is run so much better. I think the problem is we talk every week. I hear you talking every week. This week it's about rail drivers. Another week it might be nurses and doctors. But Britain is just held down by a parasitic civil bureaucracy. There's too many people in middle management. We don't need a Welsh Assembly. I can be Welsh by walking in the countryside and watching the rugby. I don't need, this secondary government.
I think we should do this tomorrow, shouldn't we? I think that's a brilliant point, Andrew. You can be Welsh but not wish to have devolution.
Yeah,
we can either do it
call.
tomorrow or we can do it next week. Keep all of those coming in, please. Lots of messages coming in as well this morning. Doctors, we continually view the Channel migrant crisis as our problem, when both legally and morally it's actually a French issue. We should therefore use our assets to patrol the Channel and help our French partners to meet their obligations and return the migrants to their shores. No doubt you'll say the French won't accept this, but we're expected to accept the consequences of the French failure. Well said. Thank you very much indeed for all of that. This is talkTV. Hello, very good morning to you. It's just after 9 o'clock now on Saturday, April the 27th, and I'm David Bull. This is Weekend Breakfast here on talkTV. Now, as you would expect, I have great news for you on a very rainy morning. It is Gummy Bear Day today. Yum! A day celebrating the chewy sweets.
Yum!
It's also the Ray Scarecrow Festival taking place in Ray in Lancashire. Yes, it is. What is that? Well, apparently, villagers adorn their homes with scarecrows. There is also a lantern procession. Well, I'm looking at these. These are rather marvellous. There is a lantern procession of scarecrows and a scarecrow competition too. And today is also Marconi Day, a day to celebrate the father of the radio. The Italian wireless communicator pioneer. Yes, that's right, Guglielmo Marconi. And where would we be without radio? As I said, these Italians get everywhere, don't they, Gabriella? Let's move to today's fascinating facts.
Today's fascinating facts.
Dr. Rene is in the house.
I thought you were about to say where we would be without Rene.
No,
you said
radio. Definitely not Rene. Right, what were they?
Right, so we had 1667.
Yes.
John Milton sold the rights to Paradise Lost for the first time, £10.
And what's that worth in today's money?
19.99 and 68 pence.
Was it? Okay. Very good. Next.
Now you've thrown me completely off of my memory track. 1749.
Yes.
candles.
Yes.
Music for the royal fireworks
Yes.
was played for the first time.
Yes.
Yeah.
What was
The best I've got.
No, what happened?
The best I've got.
So he was
Fireworks went off.
Yeah, so he was conducting and fire broke out, so he carried on and the audience ran.
Oh, yeah,
leaving
completely.
him
That
there.
passed me by.
Okay, fine. Okay, next one.
1840.
Yes.
The foundation stone to the Palace of Westminster was laid.
I find that absolutely fascinating because people look at the Palace of Westminster and think it's very, very old. I
Yeah.
mean, 1840 years old, but it's not as old
No, it's-
as you think
yeah.
because it's obviously mock Gothic. It's a stunning
It's
building.
very. I was going to say it's very beautiful.
But the best bit is the Westminster Hall, which is the oldest surviving part of that, which is, I mean, dripping in history.
It
Actually.
really is. It's where we tried and executed the only king in history,
We did.
Charles.
We did.
First.
Yes, we did. That gives me an idea. Dr. Rennie, I'll see you in the Westminster Hall. Well done. Those were today's fascinating facts. So many messages coming in. Pete, Wally, good morning to you. Hi, Docs. Great show. Thank you very much indeed. I have an idea for stopping the migrant boats from leaving France. We should have approximately 60 to 100 jet skis going up and down the French coast, working shifts. And these should be in constant communication with the French police. This will stop the boat taxi service at source. If the French don't want to go along with this, then they will definitely tell us that the French have no... Oh, it will tell us the French have no intention of stopping the boats. Peter, this one says, if the public knew the extent of the waste of money on the engineering side of the railways, there would be a national outrage. Anyone working in the industry understands that privatisation has been needed for a number of years. That's really interesting. If we're looking for funding, I would start by removing the millions of tonnes of scrap rail and materials that are left abandoned up and down the rail infrastructure. I think we need to rethink what we do with the railways. Thank you very much. Indeed. But let me just one quick one actually. If good morning doctors, if they nationalise the railways, all that will happen is the union barons will be able to bring the whole network to a halt. It will be going back to the 1970s.
Well, that's very interesting because Susan New-Wren says here that if trains will be nationalised, so the rail companies will then be pre-warned that this is going to happen, standards will decline before a changeover because they'll just throw their hands up and think, well, why do I need to do anything else?
Or they might argue that they'll take the operating companies back in under the national umbrella as and when they actually can't afford to exist. That's what they will say.
Yeah, but to get to that point, standards will decline and things may be worse and possibly more dangerous. I think it's a really interesting situation, but once again, you've just highlighted that in any civil service run body, there is so much waste that it is criminal.
This is Janet in Cornwall. Good morning to you. Good morning, doctors. Read the question about the railways and how I rate the service. The answer is I don't rate it at all. It would be good to get it to work. And I think to nationalise it, it would probably improve. As in the southwest, like Cornwall, we've been forgotten. The railway service is appalling. Thank you for that. Simon in Hull. Good morning, doctors. When you go through the Channel Tunnel or the ferry, you're checked and processed. They must process thousands of people every single day.
That is going to get more complicated.
We have 600 or so immigrants coming over per day and we can take us months to process them. The simple answer is to build more processing centres, employ more people and process them in a day or two.
But it's not the simple answer, is it? Because at the moment we approve nearly 80% of those, whereas the rest of our neighbours around don't do that. We need to actually get rid of these civil servants who think that everybody has a right to live in this very small country. Jamie Stead says, I agree, Renee, close the borders for now. We need to take stock and think about us for once.
Interesting. Keep all of those messages coming in, please. Now, if you're wondering, we are going to be here next week. We're not going to be in Barbados. Talk, though, as you have probably heard, is going completely digital. From Monday, you can join Talk on DAB+, on your smart speaker, also on your connected device. Mike Graham will be here for breakfast. Julia Hartley-Brewer from 10 o'clock. Jeremy Carr, weekdays from 4. The home of common sense is back. Talking of common sense, it's time for Transatlantic Talk.
Transatlantic Talk with Caroline Feraday.
Yeah, Feraday! How are you?
Oh, I cannot promise any common sense coming out of this country this week. You're crazy, are you?
Yeah, well, that is very true indeed. So, shall we talk about everyone's favourite character, Donald Trump?
Yeah, so we touched upon this because we're into the second week of a very significant moment, really. It's the first criminal trial of a US president. What's this about? It's about hush money payments ahead of the 2016 election that were used to hide negative stories in the National Enquirer. And it's actually the criminal charge is about the way that money was run through his businesses. But it meant we got some juicy testimony and some quite interesting testimony for media nerds like me out there. David Pecker, do you know who he is? He's the publisher of
he was
the
the
National Enquirer. Yeah, and look, back in the day, perhaps before his day, but back in the day, the National Enquirer was quite groundbreaking as a tabloid. And I know it's sort of better known for like, oh, there's an alien abduction. But it did used to sell a lot of copies, nearly 7 million when it decided it would pay, you know, a mourner from Elvis's funeral for a picture of him in his coffin, for instance. So big sales. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about a tiny magazine. We're talking about something that has huge influence on the American public. So he detailed the way that it has worked at the National Enquirer in more recent times, what you might lightly call checkbook journalism, which is not uncommon, but it goes more towards what's called catch and kill. And the idea of a catch and kill is that somebody, for example, Stormy Daniels, could come forward and say, I slept with Donald Trump, and the magazine would buy that story. But the magazine wouldn't publish that story. They'd give that person the money and then keep it secret. And that really is the idea of the catch and kill, that there is this political influence to it.
So essentially they would catch the story and they kill the story dead.
Which goes on here.
Correct.
Which does, as Renee says, does go on in this country as well.
It does, but it really does undermine the journalism, having that journalism exposed. Because, look, if you guys at Talk were aware of a story involving a politician as major as the president or the to-be president or a presidential candidate, and you decided that you weren't going to act on that, that is your journalistic integrity. Absolutely. That is under scrutiny. So there is a lot of scrutiny about the journalism that went on there, but that is not what is on trial. That is just right there for us to have a little beady eye on early up and set the scene for what went on ahead of the 2016 election. So that will go ahead. You know, it's been a fairly busy week for Trump, but his big complaint is really that it's kept him off the campaign trail.
And how is this playing out in the States?
There's a lot of fascination with it, but there, you know, every week here I come and tell you what a divided country it is, because Trump every day has been playing his usual martyr card and laying into witnesses, breaching the gag order that's been placed upon him by the court. So he sort of gets away with things that perhaps you or I might not get away with anyway in terms of the court, I think, because it is so charged. So yeah, it's playing along you know, the lines you would expect. There is always the fascination with Trump, isn't there? He's a hugely fascinating character. I must have read more books about Trump than any other politician, anyone, anywhere, including the Michael Cohen book, actually, which is what this goes back to. Michael Cohen was his fixer, and Michael Cohen went to jail for this scheme. It was Michael Cohen who allegedly paid Stormy Daniels, the porn star, the money, and it was about paying Michael Cohen back and how his money was paid back and run through the books of the Trump Organization that is under scrutiny.
So what happens from here then?
Well, the trial will continue. There'll be more evidence. The prosecution at the moment making their case. Then the defence will make their case, and then there's a bit of to and fro, and then the jury decides. I mean, who would want, even finding the jury, we went through this last week, just finding the jury and the pressure on a jury on a trial like this is a lot.
And so what sort of timeline are we looking at?
I think it's about 6 weeks all told. Bear in mind, it took a week to pick the jury. So even though it's really the first week of evidence, it's the second week of the trial. So you're looking at about 6 weeks.
Right, let's move on and talk about what's going on at college campuses across the US. These are about the pro-Palestinian encampments that are starting to appear across these college campuses, and demonstrations too.
Yeah, right across the US now. Now, this is something that we haven't really seen up until this point, but at college campuses, and I'm talking major universities across the United States, there are now a lot of pro-Palestinian protests going on, and those have been quite contentious. There's been quite difficult, sort of quite tense in the policing of those, and they have spread quite rapidly. USC, which is the University of Southern California, over this side, actually went to the point where it cancelled its graduation ceremony, and I think that is something we could see at a lot more universities, because of course they're coming into graduation. They've only got about another month or so of the term time left. So this is the same students, by the way, having the graduation cancelled now, who 4 years ago, they graduate out of high school here, don't they? They would have had their graduations cancelled for COVID, so a bit unlucky with their timing either way. But it has been very dramatic. There's a lot of tension. Apparently, I've spoken to some students saying what a strange atmosphere and intense atmosphere it is on college campuses right now. And as you can see, a really heavy police presence and some sort of quite heavy-handed policing of that.
So I think that's the criticism, isn't it? So particularly like at Columbia University, where more than 100 people were arrested, the police called in, as you say, very heavy-handed tactics. I mean, students are allowed to protest. So what's the response from the authorities?
Well, I think they'd like it to stop, basically, and they are. I mean, the police, I know you guys have conversations about the way that your protests are policed in the UK, but the police here are very heavy-handed when it comes to any sort of protest, so that it can fuel it. I mean, look, I love the optimism of youth. College kids are going to protest because they still believe they can change the world, and when they're old and cynical like us, they'll realise it makes no difference.
But just in terms of how,
it's quite a rite of passage, isn't it?
But the thing is that the more you clamp down on these students in the various college campuses, I imagine more will pop up at other campuses in Synergy.
I think they think if they clamp down on it hard enough, that it will stop. And I agree with you that will just cause tensions to flare. Look, it's very complex, and I wouldn't know how to police it in the right way. But you would think that going towards sort of not escalating tensions and not escalating it would be the way forward. But that isn't the way that policing is done in the US.
No,
generally,
I
anyway.
mean, yeah, and these pictures, I mean, they're fairly draconian. You've got police here with great big machine guns who are policing students.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've seen video today that hasn't been on media of at USC of them being incredibly heavy-handed with students and kind of, you know, going in quite aggressively with them. So the pictures you're looking at are a lot more gentle than some of the ones that I've seen, for sure.
Why are they all wearing masks?
Oh, that's a very good point, actually. Why are they all wearing masks? Is that a thing again now in the States?
No, I don't. That's a great question. No idea.
So they're not brave enough to show their faces. They want to protest, but they're not brave enough to show their faces.
Or are they?
I think there could be an argument of that.
There may well be. Let's talk about Harvey Weinstein. We talked about this on the show yesterday. Bring people up to date.
Yeah, so obviously this was right at the heart of the Me Too movement, where he was really the biggest fish that got caught in that. And he was found guilty in LA and again in New York of rape charges. The New York charges have actually been overturned. And they've been overturned on appeal because it was said that he didn't have a fair trial. So what will happen going forward, whether or not they'll have another trial or whether they won't have another trial, is a little bit up in the air. He's still in jail, of course, because he was found guilty in LA,
yeah, so it doesn't quash that one, does it?
Everyone.
It doesn't quash that one. It doesn't quash that one. This is about a separate ruling. And they say it was an abuse of judicial discretion.
Yeah, so to get into the technicalities of it, basically there were witnesses in that first trial who were permitted to give evidence that he wasn't charged with. And so his lawyers have argued that he wasn't able to have a fair trial. The appeal judges have agreed with that and overturned that conviction. So it overturns that, it's not a get out of jail free card at this point for him. But it is a very significant ruling of somebody who was found guilty of somebody of such cultural significance, somebody so well known, who in the middle of that Me Too movement was found guilty, to have that overturned. So I thought it was worth us noting that.
Yeah, and I saw the press conference, actually, I think it was yesterday, from the founder of the Me Too movement as well, and just saying it brought back these horrific memories. Just this ruling has just kind of reignited all of that yet again.
Yeah, of course it has. Do you know what? I saw a meme in the week, and it was basically like, would you rather be attacked by a bear or a man? And the outcome was basically, the comeback was basically, well, if I was attacked by a bear, people would believe me. So there is a little bit of that, I think. But, everybody is entitled to a fair trial. It is really important that is upheld, and that the judicial system is, gives way to a fair trial. So I think that's a reasonable thing to expect and ask for.
Absolutely right. Caroline, thank you as ever. That's Caroline Feraday, broadcaster and journalist, live from sunny Los Angeles. That was today's Transatlantic Talk.
Transatlantic Talk with Caroline Feraday.
Lots of messages coming in. This one says, good morning, doctors. When people argue we can't return the boats to France, this is clearly on your minds here, because of the EU. That does not make logical sense. By accepting our millions of pounds to assist, 500 million I think so far, to assist with stopping migrants, surely France already admits to having a duty to stop them. Therefore, they can't object if we are starting to do the job for them. So how do you view this? Because actually, if Michael Martin is saying, the spectre of Rwanda and being deported to Rwanda is making people cross from the United Kingdom into the Republic...
Well, that's nonsense, though, isn't it?
Well, it probably is. But if that is the case, then surely that's a bit of a win. I think Sunak had quite a good week last week.
Look, I think he had a good week. But we must always look at all of this within a political remit. So Macron has a difficult situation.
Well, he's talking to his own audience.
He's talking to his own audience. They do not want the migration problem any more than we do. And that highlights that it's actually a worldwide and Europe-wide problem.
Look at Italy.
Yeah, exactly. So actually, I feel a little bit sorry for them on the one hand, but I also understand that it suits Macron to let the migrants keep coming to the UK. But we are a tiny island. We don't have the landmass that France has or Spain has. We don't have room for these people.
Also, one might say to them, being in the European Union, it's your fault because you have freedom of movement throughout the whole of the European Union, which is what you wanted.
Although it is a little bit puzzling how the biggest rise in countries on our boats now is Vietnamese.
Yes.
Because how were they getting into Europe in the first place?
That is a very good point indeed, and I don't know the answer to that. And of course, we heard about those people smugglers who are targeting Vietnamese people. So there is a huge industry behind this.
Massive.
But just in terms of that, I do think Sunak had a good week.
Yes.
And he obviously went running and showed us that he's fit.
He would have an even better week if a boat arrived in Dover today and those people went straight onto a plane.
Well, quite. But they are saying 10 to 12 weeks. It's had royal assent now. And the comment we had last week from one of the viewers saying the last in should be the first out, that really has had enormous resonance with people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also if we had these people in detention centres and we knew who they were, rather than writing them a letter and hoping they stay.
So did you see this 7 + 5 day rule?
Yeah.
So, yeah, they get given 7 days notice, then 5 days later. Well, in 12 days...
They're gone.
They're gone.
Of course they're gone.
Yeah.
Like the 40-odd thousand that we don't know where they are right now as we speak. Interestingly, the devolution has really hit on people, David. It really has. Have I got time to read?
Yeah.
Richard Petty here says Yousaf and the SNP could lose the confidence vote. They won't have to stand down, and they won't stand down. You complain of a 14-year Conservative government in England. We've had the SNP for 17 years. Scotland has been destroyed by Labour's proportional voting system created to stop one-party rule. Jesus wept.
Absolutely fascinating. Rene, thank you very much indeed. Time for a break. After the break, Mr. Denya will be here, yes, with his delights. I cannot wait. This is talkTV. Welcome back to Weekend Breakfast Time, 9:28. Gosh, it's miserable outside. Many of you getting in touch. Sue in Cheltenham. I'm off to Cardiff today. Oh, lovely. I'm off to Cardiff today from Cheltenham by train using my senior rail card. I'm a little wary as every time my son has travelled back and forth, train after train is cancelled. I've used the card a handful of times as the trains have been rubbish, and when it expires on the 1st of May, I will not be renewing it. I'm 66, I can't survive on a pension. I have a bus pass. I got up at 7:45 for a 10:15 train and realised to get there on time, I need to catch a bus at 8:15. The later bus should get there just before the train, but cancellations are a risk. A bus takes me 1 hour to the station when it actually by car is only 15 minutes away. So guess which one I'm doing? That's the point, isn't it? No infrastructure. Also, I was just about to read this one. Rita in Cambridgeshire. Hi, my two favourite daughters. Good morning to you. Why do we never hear that the small boats crisis should lay firmly at the feet of the EU due to their naive, gullible and ideological open borders policy? And Schengen, which I mentioned just before the break, funnily enough, of which we were never part of when we were members. If Europe had man-controlled borders, then this crisis would not be at our front door now. That is the nub of this.
It is.
The minute you're in Europe, freedom of movement. So there are no checks on anything, although certain countries are now very concerned about that.
Yes, of course they are. You know, and you know there are reasons for that. Emmy Rose has just sent one in, actually, I think, which I will read. Different cultures have different ideas about women, and I don't want my sex to be sacrificed on the altar of multiculturalism. She then sends a long example of in other countries how women are viewed. They get raped by soldiers, they get left to die. You know, and we're seeing that. Sweden is having a terrible problem, and they're actually publishing the data by country of origin, and it is those Somalia, all of those countries where they have different views of women that are creating the problem. I don't want that problem for me and my daughter either.
But you come to this country, you subscribe to British values, and this is how
how do you when you've been brought up in a different way?
No, I understand. I understand all of that. Also, that whole devolution thing has really taken off as well.
Really
so many
has.
messages on that. Keep all of those coming in as well. I think we should do that as a separate topic another time about whether devolution has actually worked. Has it succeeded, or has it been an abject failure? Let's move on, though. Very exciting. It's time for Denya's Delights.
Denya's Delights.
You were premature. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Look at what a beautiful day it's behind me. Look at this.
It's summer.
This is summer. Apparently 10 days now of rain, so loads of rain this weekend.
How cheery are
Isabel,
you?
morning,
Isabel Lang told me yesterday, Isabel, very
Inside
famous,
weather info.
Yeah, a very famous weather presenter.
Yeah.
She told me May the 7th is going to be a scorcher.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
That's it. That's summer, isn't it?
That's
May the 7th.
That's it. That's it. So I've got my speedos ready to go on May the 7th. Yeah.
I can't wait for those Instagram posts.
Well, quite. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you.
Good.
In a moment, we're going to go through some stuff, because it is terrible weather. In a moment, we'll go through some stuff to watch this weekend.
Oh, great
We've got
idea.
some really good stuff. I wondered if I may just start with a news story that's kind of developed overnight. Lots of people are talking about this. If you were watching ITV's News at 10 last night, now you know this guy, don't you?
I
You
do,
know
Raggy Omar. He's such a lovely man.
Something happened last night, and we still don't know what, but he started ITV's News at 10 looking like he was struggling. We're not going to play the clip because I just think it's in bad taste and it's gratuitous, but he slowed down, he was stumbling over his words, and he looked... I mean, who knows? He looked like he was having some kind of on-air panic attack. They paused the news show. It's been taken off. You can't rewatch it now. It's been taken off catch-up. ITV have said they're aware the viewers were concerned about his well-being, and he's now receiving medical help. He became unwell whilst presenting News at 10, and, as I say, was taken off air and is receiving medical care.
There was a lot of kickback on... I woke up this morning very early, obviously, and there was a lot of kickback saying, well, you know, what about a duty of care? Because what was he like before he went on air? But, you know, if it was a seizure, we don't know.
These things can just happen.
It can just happen. So
I mean, we know, so working within broadcasting, you turn up an hour before. They wouldn't put somebody on air who was having problems. You know, there's always a deputy. There's always some kind of solution. So this clearly happened.
And also you struggle on. You know, when we carry on when we're not very well or you don't feel very well. And of course, he may not have felt very well and thought, I'll just get through this.
Exactly. But you know, our
he honestly, he's done some great charity work with me as well. And Raggy is one of the nicest people. people. So I wish
you know, and
wish
he
him,
is the
very
international
well.
affairs editor there. He has done so much for ITV. He's hosted different panel shows, hosted the news. So he is a very talented man. So speedy recovery to him, I think.
Absolutely. Are we really going to talk about Taylor Swift again?
Well, we have to. I mean,
do we?
So, I mean, this album, we always knew it was going to be at #1, but the statistics, Renee, are startling.
Startling? Am I going to be startled?
I think, calm yourself. Calm yourself. Calm down there. 31 tracks on this album. It took me all week. I've finally listened to all of it.
And
some of it I like. Do you know what is interesting? I like an album that has highs and lows and stuff. It seems very much kind of on. It's a bit moany.
So that's what people were saying yesterday. Is they said there's too much of it, bit moany, bit middle ground.
Yeah. But very clever. The lyrics are incredible. She's such a great role model.
Don't cross her.
She's do not upset the Swifties.
Because you will be in the lyrics.
So what she's done, she's managed to shift 270,000 UK chart units this week.
What is a chart
Well,
unit?
it's like kind of copies of the album and people who've streamed it and stuff. So collectively, this is the most successful album since Ed Sheeran's Divide in 2017. She now equals Madonna, having the most amount of UK #1 albums.
She will never be Madonna, in my view.
The only people that beat her, the Beatles had 16, the Rolling Stones 14, Robbie Williams 14, and Elvis 13, and she equals Bruce Springsteen now as well. Of course, there's been all this kind of like feedback in the week about the people that she slated on the album and the reasons why, but none of them have really complained, because if you're name checked in a Taylor Swift album, you're doing all right.
Yeah,
you know, it's pretty good.
I would say so. How old is she now?
She is. That's a good question. I'm going to go for, and I'm making this up. I'm going to say
because she was sort of referred to yesterday as a grande dame of music, and I thought, well, she's very young.
Do you know the thing is, she's been knocking around for a good 15.
She's 34.
Yeah, so I was going to say kind of. I thought 32.
Yeah.
But she's doing all right.
We've got a Swiftie in the control room.
But you know, you have to think at that age to have such a rich tapestry, a great back catalogue.
But we're talking a lot about Taylor Swift, aren't we, all of the time, when at the same time Beyonce has got an equally massive album out.
Yeah.
That's completely different from her usual, which we don't really talk about.
It's doing really well. It's doing really well, and you know, and everybody's praised her for her new direction in music. For the we spoke about the cover of Jolene, which is really
I love
good.
it.
The Renaissance tour was huge. It's interesting with Beyonce because she started life with Destiny's Child. We kind of grew up with her as part of a band, so you almost kind of. You just take it as a given that everything that she's going to release. She's been around for so many years, 25 years since Destiny's Child started releasing singles. Yeah, so I used to work at a dance. I used to be cool.
You worked hang on a minute. You worked
at a dance radio station.
Did you?
Well, I used to break all that.
What was it called?
Galaxy.
Oh yes, I know Galaxy.
Galaxy 101 in Bristol was my first kind of big radio job. But we used to play all the Destiny's Child songs, and they were great. You know?
I grew up
and they
with
still
those.
sound really good.
I know.
So weirdly, I'm seeing some friends from Galaxy later this week. I am. I'll tell you. Oh, actually, next week.
Is that weird because you've got friends?
Yeah, pretty much both actually. Friends who are cool and work at dance stations.
Look at that.
Yeah,
Who'd have thought? You're a thing.
I'm definitely a thing, as well, you know. Right. Okay. So that's Taylor Swift. Now, must stream.
Yeah, I'm going to play you something. This is #1 on Netflix, not just here, but around the world. It's Baby Reindeer. It's really kind of built up traction. It's been out for 2 weeks, but this week people have started.
What is it?
watching
Song?
it. So here we go. I've got the trailer. Take a look at this.
Got really manly hands, haven't you? Chiseled jawline. Should we run away together? So you're a comedian?
Sort of.
It's not going well.
So is that a question?
Somebody hurt you, didn't they? Who was it?
Martha, can you let go of my hand now, please? Martha, please let go.
Don't you dare!
Very confused.
Do you know, I'm going to run out of superlatives talking about this. It's quite simply the most stunning thing I've seen. It's the best thing I've ever seen on Netflix.
told me to watch this.
What is it, film?
So it's a 7-parter.
Oh, I see.
It's very clever, actually. Every episode's about 28 minutes long. So just when you're thinking, oh, that's a shame it's finished, you kind of watch the next one. But I would say don't binge it, because it's compelling, it's brutally honest. It's essentially a stalking story. And the guy you saw there, Richard Gadd, it's his real life experiences. He was stalked by somebody who sent him 40,000 emails within 2 years.
How do you send that many emails?
And you'll see the emails, they're completely deranged. The thing about this, you've got two characters. You've got Martha, the woman who's kind of coming to Donnie's bar, and you've got Donnie. And one moment you're completely on the side of Donnie and you're thinking how horrendous, he's being stalked. This is really scary. And then it twists.
Don't give it away.
Don't say anything.
I'm not. I'm going to be really careful.
So where do we see this?
So this is on Netflix.
Right.
It's #1 at the moment. A warning. I've never ever seen a warning on a Netflix.
What's the warning say?
The warning is the beginning of episode 4, which is probably the darkest thing I've ever watched, and I've watched some darkest things.
Yes.
It was
on a daily basis.
Moving on, but yeah, it's brutally honest. It's compelling. It makes you think. It speaks to those that need to be spoken to.
So
and I'm kind of talking in riddles
who shouldn't
here.
watch it?
People that have been stalked, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, no, I was also thinking for people who maybe don't like. Is it because is there horror in this? What's the warning? That's what I'm trying to get at.
There's some very uncomfortable scenes about abuse.
I see.
And also, but it shows us that our human. Are very basic. We've all got parts of these characters, and I think that if you are experiencing somebody stalking you or whatever, you should watch this and find out a bit more about. There's also warnings about where you should go if you are very serious matter. It's done. Do you remember Train Spotting from the 90s? It's done. The first couple of episodes are very much like that. They're clever. It's shot very close up, and there's lots of montages, and it flips backwards and forwards to now, and you're just left wanting more. And even when it finishes, you're like, wow, what did I just see?
Don't we still have in pubs and bars, I know this is a man who's being stalked, the Ask Angela?
Yeah.
Where you can go to the bar and say, is Angela here?
That's right.
And
So
it's
if you
a
want to
signal
date
that
with
you're in
somebody,
trouble, yeah.
and it's not going well, you can. It's kind of a code word, and they will call, please.
And they'll get you out. They'll get you out to the back to a taxi.
But seriously, acting is incredible. I haven't seen anything like this for so long.
So this is called Baby Reindeer.
It's called Baby Reindeer. And
it's on Netflix.
Well, each episode, about 28 minutes long, like I say, they roll into one another, and you're left thinking. It's just stuck with me. And I don't want to give it. I don't want to talk specifically.
Don't say anymore.
I don't want to be that person.
Well, as you rightly say, of course, the weather is absolutely appalling. So this weekend is a
3.5 hours.
a great
Get
time
through it.
to do it. Steve, pause there for the minute. Thank you ever so much. More of Steve Denyer and his delights after this break. This is talkTV. Back to the final part of Weekend Breakfast. Already 9:44, Saturday, April the 27th. Steve Denyer with us.
Good morning.
Hello. You're still here?
I'm still here.
Lovely. So we were talking about that Baby Reindeer, which we were talking
really is 10 out of 10 stuff. But I must just say, if it does disturb you, don't blame me. But it's incredible TV.
Okay.
I've had relatives, all people, different ages, say they really like it, but it is really in your face and disturbing.
Really?
A warning. But incredible. Lovely, great, powerful stuff. And acting this is going to win all the awards.
Well, and true drama actually should take you out of your comfort zone, and you should be able to watch things and reflect on
and
it,
challenge you and make you
and
think.
It's interesting that point you made about it keeps coming back to you and you rethink it. You see different things every single time.
And also the other thing I didn't mention is, do you remember the last time you saw something and you didn't check your phone once?
So
this is how compelling it is.
Yeah, what I've started to do is actually put my phone away when I start to watch something, because otherwise, you see a little notification. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And then a notification comes up and then you've lost your concentration completely. Right, let's move on, because we said the weather is absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
What about TV this weekend?
I've got 2 bits, something tonight, something tomorrow. Now, tonight, Inside Windsor Castle. This airs on Channel 5 at 9 o'clock.
They're really good at this.
They're good at this. This is part property porn, part history. That's my review of it. I mean, some amazing statistics about Windsor Castle. So it's got 1,000 rooms. Apparently it's occupied 40 monarchs over the years. I was like, wow. William Kate lived there. Andrew's got a place there. Can you imagine those family meals in the evening when they talk about their days.
It is a beautiful building.
You've been there.
I have.
Can you tell me about it?
It's the most extraordinary place. I had a wonderful time there. I was very fortunate. I went for a charity event and we actually had lunch in the great room. I don't even know what that room's called, but you know, in the very large one that was destroyed by fire. That was really
in '92.
In '92.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary. It was like being in a fairy tale. The whole thing.
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet.
And we ate off.
Were you the handsome prince?
I wish I was, but thank you very much indeed. No, we ate off. So I'm sure I've told this story before, but we sat down with families that we were with and stuff, and all the tablecloths had ER etched onto them.
Did you steal any of the cutlery?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
but I did think.
Apparently people do all the time.
Oh, no, they do. They nick the champagne flutes.
You see, in Scoop, they were saying about, you know, the spoons.
Yes.
They have to order these because everybody steals the spoons.
But so the funniest bit was they put down, so in front of us, they were silver plates with ER on them.
Amazing.
And I was asked what they were by one of the guests there, and I said, "Oh, these are chargers. You put the actual crockery on that." No, you didn't. We ate off silver plates.
Wow.
It was amazing. It was amazing.
Silver platters.
Yeah, it was amazing.
That's incredible. I mean, I went to the Tower of London the other week and I was shown around by Spike.
Yeah, so
who's
I'm
a
going to see him,
beefeater.
yes.
It's an incredible experience. But, you know, Windsor Castle is even bigger, isn't it? And it's grander and it's
so anyway, back to this. So basically you're going to see behind the scenes, aren't you?
Yeah, and that's on tonight on Channel 5. Something I watched this week is Red Eye. I've put Red Eve here. That's a completely different thing. Red Eye. Can I play you a little bit? Because it's really good. Have a little look at this. A trailer of Red Eye on ITV tomorrow.
My name is Matthew Nolan. I am being extradited for a crime that I did not commit.
We now have confirmation of death on flight 357. What am I in the middle of? If it is murder, the killer is still on board.
Oh, you know, ITV are really good at this. This is real kind of high impact. Unfortunately, and I totally agree with what you just said.
Well, I just said it's always the same people.
Richard Armitage is always the mysterious kind of
But we've
stranger.
got brilliant actors in this country. Why does it always go to the same people?
That's exactly what I thought. I mean, I did think that for the first couple of minutes.
he's very good.
And then it was completely compelling.
Yeah, it looks
It's all
really
about
good.
this guy who comes over to London Heathrow from Beijing, but apparently there's been a murder just before he steps on board the plane. So he arrives here, and then he's taken back over there. But when he goes back to Beijing, there's all kind of murders on board the plane, and it's going crazy, and you don't trust anybody on board that plane. How many gin and tonics can you have on one plane journey? Well, he'll show you.
Not quite a lot. I mean, anything with a plane, I'm in.
Yeah, me too. I'm such a plane geek. I love these hijacking things.
So do I.
You know, you're just like on the edge of your seat, and you just think how claustrophobic it must be to be on board a plane when that kind of situation is playing out. It's really good. ITV are great at doing this. Don't look. It's kind of like a blockbuster. It's nothing challenging. It's not like Baby Reindeer, but it's a great drama.
That's brilliant. I like
on
not
a Sunday
challenged.
night. I love that.
I like not to be challenged.
Just want to be entertained,
particularly at the end of the weekend.
Yeah, cool. So that's really good. So that's on the 9 tomorrow night.
Excellent. And then gigs.
Yeah, a couple of people. I love Jake Bugg. What do you think of Jake Bugg?
I don't know who Jake Bugg is.
That was the answer I was expecting. He's a great singer.
Who is Jake Bugg?
Jake Bugg he was one of is the youngest person I think ever to play at Glastonbury, and is also the person to go from the smallest stage at Glastonbury to the largest within, I think it was within 2 years. Youngest person to ever have a debut album at #1 in the UK. Just, you know.
So why don't we know who he is?
Well, I work at Virgin Radio and we played him loads.
So you're
over
cool,
the years.
basically.
I'm cool. I used to work on a dance station. So he's playing Worthing Assembly Hall tonight. But the big one, we've been talking about this tonight. I know so many people are going to London's O2 later on tonight to see Take That and Ollie
Sorry,
Mills.
I'm just going back to Jake Bugg. If he was on the tube, I wouldn't know who he was.
No, there's a couple of songs that have been picked up and used in adverts, and you will definitely know them. You'll be like, I mean, maybe I'm more of a muso, and I love him, because I've heard some of like the acoustic stuff. He does dance stuff really well. He's effortlessly cool as well. He's so good. Graham Norton used to use part of his one of his songs as his
Go and
theme.
sing one.
No, because I don't sing.
What did Graham use
I'm not paid enough. Pay me double.
What did Graham use it as?
All I need is part of his music for his show. So it just reminds me.
Okay.
Anyway, plenty of talking points there. I suppose you would go if you're a fan.
Yes, and then you mentioned Take That, and I was saying that actually the rail strikes coincide with Take That playing on the 9th of May or whatever it was.
Yeah. Whether, that's to be expected, isn't it? Every time I go and see a gig, there's a problem with the artist falling ill, the train's not working, tube's not working, me not working sometimes. They take that, Ollie Murs does a greatest hits show. He does the kind of warm-up for this. Then Take That come on stage, and they do 27 songs. They end with Rule the World. There's Never Forgetting there. There's Back for Good. There's Patience. They do Pray. They do, some of the songs right at the beginning of the 90s, like... A Million Love Songs and what have you. We've grown up with this band.
Yes,
they've been in our lives since 1992.
And so where is this? At the
London's O2. They did last night. They're doing tonight. They're packing out easy 12,500 people.
Is it sold out?
It's a sea of... I think you can get tickets. My little plan is go to the box office just before the show starts.
Yeah.
Go there. Maybe go there this afternoon is your best bet to get a ticket. They have lots of returns and tickets, last-minute tickets. They also have these things called production seats where they release sections right at the last minute, and you can buy these seats at face value. So actually, maybe go on to the O2 website before. If you're around South East London, possibly go to North Greenwich or the Jubilee line, pop in there.
It's such a great venue.
And tell them Denya sent you.
it is a brilliant venue, isn't it? And the way, actually, that it goes straight on.
Because it's a really high venue. So the thing is, you always get a good view.
You do.
You might be about a mile up in the air.
I feel sick when I go up there. I won't go up there anymore. It makes me feel I'm going to fall.
Does it?
Yeah, I was like that. When I saw Madonna, I thought, oh my gosh, I got up.
I felt that until I had a gin and I felt
It's the 400 seats. Don't book the 400 seats.
Is that right?
Is that the section?
So if you are right at the top, you are very high
it's
up.
really high up. It's like a nosebleed section.
It definitely is. Anything else?
I think that's just about it.
Yes.
All I want to say is have a great weekend.
Oh, thanks.
Watch Baby Reindeer. Because you don't get many shows like that. It's the most stunning thing I've seen.
Do I interrupt Manifest to watch Baby Reindeer?
Absolutely.
Right, okay.
Absolutely.
I'm in the middle of that as well, So, I need to get on with that. Steve, always a
Lovely
pleasure.
to see
Thank you
you
very
both.
much
Thank you.
indeed. That was today's Denya's Delights.
Denya's Delights.
Let's take some calls. Andrew's in Halifax. Good morning to you, Andrew.
Morning, David. Morning, Renee.
Morning.
It's about the whole devolution debate and the rise of Scottish separatism. I want to put another angle on this, if I may.
Please.
I'm pretty sure that both of you guys have walked down Whitehall and looked at the cenotaph many times.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's so... It's my favourite monument in London. It's so powerful and yet it's so simple. It's just got a simple inscription, the glorious dead. That's it.
Yes.
And the flags that fly from there, you have the Union flag, and then you have the various flags of the armed forces.
Yes.
Most, or if not all, have the Union flag emblazoned on. There's no England flag. There's no Scotland flag. There's no Northern Ireland flag. There's no Wales flag. Those people, my forefathers, and probably yours too, fought on battlefields and died in their millions to defend something called the United Kingdom. And I really have less than zero time for anyone who wants to dismember that, whether they choose to call it Irish unity or Scottish independence, whatever cuddly emollient term they want. As far as I'm concerned, it's the dismemberment, the dismantling of my country, and I hold all of those people in absolute contempt.
So, devolution, when it was introduced, was really done, I think, to give the nations a sense of autonomy. Was it actually the undoing of the United Kingdom?
Well, I campaigned vigorously. I campaigned against the Belfast Agreement because I believed it rewarded terrorists for little and nothing I've seen in the intervening years has changed my perspective on that, and I campaigned against devolution. Unfortunately, I was on the losing side in all three, but I just think wherever it's been tried, devolution in this country. If you're going to have devolution, have regions.
Yeah.
But what I mean is, don't just have regions of England and then Scotland and Wales. Have a southeast region. Have an assembly that encompasses Cumbria, Dumfries and Galloway and the borders and Northumberland. Have it in that way. So therefore, this idea that you are, this separatism, it's become an absolute poison. And both of you guys know that virtually no other country in the world would tolerate these continued attacks on the constitutional integrity in the way we tolerate it, either from Sinn Féin or from the SNP. And it really is about time somebody in central government stood up and told them both to pack up and ship out.
Really interesting, Andrew. Thank you very much.
Thank
Also,
you.
I'm really pleased you called it the Union flag, not the Union Jack as well. Andre is in Wiltshire. Good morning to you.
Hi, Dave.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning, Pete. As far as I'm concerned, the whole government setup is a complete and utter farce. It is the most debauched government going so far in history. And they should all resign. Every single one of them.
And do you rate the opposition?
They're all the same. They're all tied with the same brush, mate. They're all politicians. And that is where the problem lies.
Don't we need politicians?
Politicians are causing the problems. Where is the fact that it's supposed to be the people's government? Where has the people got a say in all this?
Well, at the ballot box.
Yeah.
You do need politicians, though, don't you?
On putting off having an election because they're too scared that they're going to lose.
Well, that may well be true. Andre, thank you very much indeed for your call. I cannot believe our time is almost up.
Can I read you one quick message?
Yes.
It's relevant to Steve.
Go on,
I've
then.
seen Baby Reindeer. This is Mo. Mo knows. I'm still reeling from it. Shocking, haunting, dark from start to finish, but quite frankly, the best British drama I have ever seen.
Oh, I totally agree. That's a brilliant.
Well done, Denya. Well done. That was a Denya's delight. That was. Peter, talking of delights, Peter Cardwell, good morning.
Speaking of people who look like large moose.
Stop. How are you?
I was talking about you.
Okay. I'm used to it from you.
I'm very well, thank you.
Good.
How are you? You well?
Yes, good, thanks.
Good,
yeah,
good,
what's
good
coming
to see
up?
all three of you. Well, the SNP is falling apart, Scottish Government. Do you know there was an there was a Green Party MSP who was doing an interview with the BBC yesterday and started crying. About what is happening and the fact that it's
But
feels
you
like a
can't,
divorce.
as a political geek, you've got to love the maths, you've got to love those comments, 64 versus 63.
Yeah,
You've then got Ash Regan, no great loss.
No great loss.
Gotta love
I
it.
bet he's regretting those comments
Yeah.
now. No, I mean, I'm
Is he going to go?
Yes, I mean, he has to.
When?
I'm all probably this week. I mean, I'm all for the drama, but obviously you got to ask the question, what comes next?
Yeah.
And Kate Forbes as well. She was his competitor, the Wee Free. She was certainly castigated on the
But
on the
her
gender
crime
critical
was being a
stuff.
Christian.
Her crime was being a Christian and saying that trans women aren't women, which is obviously factually wrong. The King is back.
Yes.
As well.
Front
We're gonna
page,
talk about that.
almost
We're gonna
every
talk about
newspaper.
Defence spending. We're going to have a debate about that. Should the money be spent on the armed services?
So that's interesting. Just very quickly,
Yeah.
Sunak, 2.5%. I think actually he may well have pulled a masterstroke by committing
It'll
to
be
that.
interesting to see what happens. I think it's very important, certainly in the context of the local elections, which are of course happening this week. We're talking about Rwanda as well. I asked the Prime Minister a question about it this week.
I saw. I texted you.
You did text me. Thank you, Tim Shipman. Speaking of politics, Tim Shipman, chief political commentator, great job title at the Sunday Times, has a new book out. So we're going to be talking to him. It's called No Way Out. It's about the craziness of Brexit. The campaign against anti-Semitism march as well has been cancelled. There is a type of march. I was going to go on it actually after the programme.
too.
There is a type of march that is happening. We're going to talk to someone on that.
There's
And
a
also-
static march now.
Yes, exactly. And also whether British people are more loyal to their political party than their partner.
What do you think?
Well, we're going to find out later on. Lucy Beresford. We're going to find out whether it's the thing. Apparently people
Is
are.
it a thing?
So I voted this week by post. It took me all week to do my form, which it never does, because usually I know who I'm going to vote for. And I was in agony over who to do it. And for the first time ever, I held my nose and did not vote for who I would have traditionally voted for.
How interesting. And the relationship is you in the ballot box, or in your case, the kitchen
My
table.
kitchen table.
Yeah, exactly. But at least you voted, and it's really important that people do go out and vote. And of course, we've got the local elections coming up. Peter, I hope the show goes very well. I'm sure it will. Steve Denyer, thank you very much
see you
indeed.
guys.
As always, Dr. Rennie, thank you very much. Are you popping in tomorrow?
Shall we?
Yeah. we shall. We'll all be shiny tomorrow, and we'll be back for more tomorrow. Thank you very much indeed for your company this morning. We are going to be back tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock. Don't miss it. This is talkTV. Peter Cardwell is up next.
This